Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor Sikkema, Dalton Wasserman, here with you guys to preview Week 5, the first week that has bye weeks. We got 4 teams on the bye: the Packers, the Steelers, the Bears, the Falcons. Falcons were the mystery team that Dalton could not think of right before we went live. I cheated. I looked it up. So I don't want to put Dalton on blast too much, but Falcons were that last team, Dalton, for the bye weeks.
It was. It was a fourth. This has to be an even number. I'm like, who's that fourth one? Who did we not preview this week? Who did I not look at? But we go through the other 14 games. We get enough on the other 28 teams. We'll be just fine.
So we're going to be talking about both sides of the ball, the offenses, the defenses for every single matchup. We'll give you some of the PFF stats that we think will matter most towards the outcome of this game. We will pick a winner, as we always do. Dalton, I am happy to remind you of what happened last week, because I got a game up on you, which means that we are now 45, 18, and 1. Both of us. We are dead even through 4 weeks of the NFL season. You know what? I'm just going to say it's that Giants game. I'm going to say it's that Giants upset that I called that was the one extra victory that I don't think the rest of them were even. But in my head, I'm just going to think that it was that Giants game that got the one up on you.
No, we did. We had several different ones, but I think that is the biggest one, considering you called out the biggest upset of the week. We differed on Eagles-Bucks. We differed on Jets-Dolphins was another one. There was a few of them last week. The results were kind of odd when it came to which ones we got right and wrong, but I'll give you that. That Giants call out, that's the one that won you the week.
Shout out to everybody who's in the chat already for the show. Joining us for the next, couple hours or so as we're previewing all these games. Walt's already wanting to know if I use Dippity-Doo in my hair. Not today, baby. It's hat day. It's a melon hat day today.
I didn't either.
I was going to ask. And I'm glad we got to the bottom of that before the show started. We're going to talk about a lot of numbers here on this show from our PFF database. If you guys want to see this for yourself, you can get a PFF Plus subscription and get 25% off doing so. PFF NFL Show 25. That's how you get that 25% off. So you can check out everything. The grades that everybody on Twitter loves so much today. You can check out all the other data points beyond the grades and so much value that comes with a PFF Plus subscription. It's the betting analysis, it's the fantasy football work. And when we get into the draft season, it's all the great draft stuff as well, the free agency tools, all that great stuff. If you don't have a subscription, now you can get 25% off. PFF NFL Show 25. That is how you do that. Dalton, Thursday Night Football, heading out west, headed to L.A. Los Angeles Rams taking on the San Francisco 49ers. Now, I understand 49ers gone through a lot of injuries so far in the early parts of the season. But anytime divisional foes match up against one another, sometimes you just throw a little bit of that logic out of the window because you know you're going to get your best every single time you line up against these teams. Where do you want to start with this one? You want to talk about the Rams? You want to talk about the 49ers before we get into who we think is going to win on Thursday Night Football?
I'm going to talk about this Rams offense because, honestly, okay, I think it's pretty hard to talk about this 49ers offense right now, considering the uncertainty surrounding if Brock Purdy's going to play, if Jawan Jennings is going to play, if Ricky Pearsall is going to play. There's a chance that this offense is basically just Mac Jones and Christian McCaffrey trying to find points against a really good defense. So I'm going to go with the Rams offense, and I'm going to go with a bit of the schematic approach to this. And look, Sean McVay, for a long time, has used motion in his offense to his advantage. I mean, the amount of motion, the amount of different looks that they have to, get defensive tells out there on the field, to add to extra blocking in the run game, to get Puka Nacua open basically wherever they want on the field. It's just been incredible once again to see the full depth of what Sean McVay and all the has in his offense and all the layers he has in his offense. They've so far run the third most plays in the NFL with motion this season. On those plays, they have the best offensive grade in the NFL, the best passing grade in the NFL. Matthew Stafford's been unbelievable taking advantage of these motion looks, and the Rams knowing where defenses are going to be post-motion. Second in explosive runs, second in explosive passes. And it's not just Puka Nacua all over the place. It's guys like Jordan Whittington helping in the run game. The tight ends move around a little bit. They change the equation so often up front in the run game. This is what I think Robert Saleh and this 49er defense, on top of all the talent the Rams have, this is what they have the most to worry about. How are they going to adjust to all of the motion all of the different pre-snap looks that Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford throw at him, because it's hard enough to prepare for a team, yes, when they're stagnant and they're really talented, but the amount that Sean McVay moves these guys around the formation pre-snap and the looks that he basically dictates defenses having to get into, I think they've done a great job of taking advantage of opposing defenses with that motion this season.
Yeah, and you got some young guys in the lineup here for the 49ers, right? Marcus Siegel, Upton Stout. Like, you're really calling on these rookies, these young guys, to be able to step up and recognize a lot of that stuff, which is really tough to do. So I think that that's a really good call out by you. Is not only are the Rams really good at it, it's an inexperienced part of the San Francisco 49ers secondary. My talking point with the 49ers, the offensive side of the ball is it's so hard to preview because, like you said, like there's just so much in and out of the lineup. I think Christian McCaffrey is just going to have a massive workload because after he himself missing basically all of last year, he's been the one constant in their lineup right now. I mean, they just need to get a lot more healthy. They need to get guys in that lineup. I think no matter what, it's going to be a big Christian McCaffrey day, and they're going to try to lean on him and try to limit the points on the scoreboard. They want this to be a little bit more low scoring. But to be honest, I think that the biggest matchup in this one is the 49ers trying to slow down this Rams offense, which it feels like has been red hot. I mean, Puka Nacua, we talked about it on the review show a couple of days ago, how he is on a historic pace right now in what he is doing. Walt is pointing out in the chat. I haven't checked this, but I'm going to, Walt's a trustworthy guy, so I'm going to say it here on the show. Devontae Adams on path for 70 catches, but 13 touchdowns. I mean, it just feels like when they go to Devontae Adams, then it's obviously very impactful, and they're able to get him in the end zone, and he's been a big red zone option for them. All of that to say, the Rams offense is red hot. And if you're going to let Matthew Stafford sit back there with no pressure, it's hard for me to think that even independent of the injuries, you're not really going to be able to keep up with this team. I just don't feel like the 49ers have had that in the tank for the majority of this season. When you look at the 49ers pass rush, we talked about this again on Monday's show, how bad the loss of Nick Bosa is. And it seems like a duh. Obviously, Nick Bosa is one of the most talented defensive players, let alone those guys on the defensive line and pass rushers in the NFL. But for this scheme specifically, for what Robert Saleh wants to do, it's paramount. Getting home with 4, or at least getting disruption with 4, is really, really important. And last week, they only got 5 pressures, had just a 36.5 pass rush win percentage, which is up a little bit from when we talked about it on Monday, or at least from when I looked at the numbers. I think it was looking at them on Sunday, and they had the review, so they bumped that up a little bit to 36.5, but that's still well below what the average is in the league. You look at their blitz percentage, though, and that's something that you brought up, Dalton, that I wanted to do a little bit more research on and just get some concrete numbers for. 22.3% pass blitz rate, or pass blitz percentage, I should say, this season. That's 29th in the NFL. They just don't blitz a lot in Saleh's system. He just does not want to do that. They were 21st in total pass blitz percentage last season when he was with the Jets. But then the year before, when the defense was a lot better, when it was operating at a really high level, or I should say an ideal level for what Robert Saleh wanted to do, they were last. They were dead last in the NFL. He doesn't want to blitz. And right now, you just don't have a lot of players other than Bryce Huff who are one-on-one pass rush winners. So I think he's going to have to get outside of his comfort zone and bring some pressure. And I'm just very curious as to how he is going to want to do that, because very clearly he doesn't love doing that at the linebacker level, because when you think of extra blitzes, you kind of think, okay, the linebackers are the most obvious point to where you're adding those blitz numbers from. But clearly over the last couple of years, he doesn't like to do that. Using Fred Warner as a blitzer, Fred Warner is effective no matter what he's doing. He's the best linebacker in the NFL. But taking him away from that middle of the field role also could feel like a little bit of a negative. So you probably don't want to blitz him a lot. So it's just, the 49ers are in a tough spot right now to try to generate pressure against Matthew Stafford and keep this game low scoring. To me, that's the only way that the 49ers win this one. I think it'll be somewhat low scoring, but I still, the score that I have is Rams 23, Niners 17. I think it'll be close just because these divisional matchups are always pretty close, but I just don't think that the 49ers are going to do enough to keep them off the scoreboard the way that they need to given their injuries as well.
Yeah, I get it. And I think it's a great point, first of all, that Walt brings up there about Devontae Adams. And I think the big stat for that, and this was what I was expecting coming into the year with Nacua and Adams as a pair. Puka Nacua, now he's great against any coverage, doesn't really matter. But Puka Nacua is the highest graded receiver in the league against zone coverage. Devontae Adams is 11th in the league in receiving grade against man coverage. When you get those one-on-ones, Adams can still win. When you get zone, then Sean McVay is going to get creative and he's going to find a way for Puka Nacua to hurt you in those holes in the zone. So I think it's two different approaches with two receivers that complement each other really well. And you mentioned it. Look, this Niners offense, it's struggling right now with the injuries, right? And the defense without Nick Bosa, Robert Saleh, if there's going to be a guy that's going to blitz, if he is going to ratchet up the blitz rate, it's probably going to be Marcus Siegel from the slot. That's a lot of times what he did with Michael Carter with the Jets out of that nickel position. But I don't think you're going to see Fred Warner and D. Winters be the guys blitzing very much. I think you would rather just bend and not break and devote those resources to coverage. So they have to find a way to rush the passer because Matt Stafford in a clean pocket is still dynamic. I'm with you right now. I have it Rams 27-20, but with all these injuries and that Rams defensive line cooking the way it is, I think the Niners could certainly score less than that. Mac Jones has played well this year when he's been in there, but this is a tall task on the road on a Thursday night. And if they don't have Jawan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall either, and this offense is just Christian McCaffrey, it is going to be some tough sledding.
Moving to Sunday morning, the Vikings once again on international grounds, this game in London, and this game got a lot more interesting because as of this morning, they're playing the Browns, and now they are playing Dillon Gabriel. You know, it's kind of funny, Dalton. I wrote an article yesterday, which was going to get published today, and it got published this morning, and the article topic was all around when is the right time for the Browns to go to Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders? And I sort of laid out the timeline of like, okay, I think that's actually coming not this week, but the next week. I was like, they're not going to do it in an international game. They're not going to give a rookie his first start with an international game with so many variables with travel and rest, time change, all that kinds of stuff. But I did say that it would probably come over the next couple of weeks, and I laid out why that made sense. Well, we put that article out, and I believe it was 10 minutes later, the news came out that Dillon Gabriel was starting that game. But I think the logic of a lot of what I was talking about with Dillon Gabriel and why it does make sense for them to make the change still stands. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts here on the Browns offense making that change to Dillon Gabriel as we preview them versus the Vikings here?
So I think the idea with Gabriel, to me, the biggest problem with this Browns offense is obviously the passing game in general, and the two biggest things are, one, the offensive line having the third worst pass blocking grade in the league. They're just a mess, especially at offensive tackle right now. And two, Joe Flacco under pressure just gives you no answers at all, and the release is a little bit slower when it comes to, just his delivery. And look, he's a 40-year-old quarterback. Everything just moves a little bit slower. You can see that on the field with Flacco. I think with Dillon Gabriel, what I'm looking at is A, maybe a little bit more of a chance to give you more mobility than Flacco, but B, a quicker release and just getting the football out of his hands, right? The one thing he did the best in the preseason was get rid of the ball 2.5 seconds or less. He had a 90 passing grade. He was 20 of 22, 214 yards, a 122 passer rating. I think this is going to be the big thing, right? When the Browns want to get in obvious passing situations, you're looking at a guy who wants to get rid of the football. I think that's the reason he ended up QB2 over Shedeur Sanders, is that Shedeur was better beyond that 2.5 second mark. He was improvising a lot, but Dillon Gabriel right now with this offensive line, he has to get the football out of his hands. I think he's going to be able to do that. He showed he could do that in the preseason, and his biggest obstacle is going to be working around this pass protection, especially against a Brian Flores defense that gets so creative with its blitz packages.
Yeah, and I agree completely. And what I laid out in that article, outside of just the timeline, which I do think that it makes sense because they have the Pittsburgh Steelers next week, and then they're hosting the Miami Dolphins, and then I can't remember who is after that. It might be the Patriots, but then they have a bye week in week 10. And it's like, okay, that's a natural reassessing point. Okay, are we happy with Gabriel or whoever they were going to go with their new starting quarterback? It obviously is Dillon Gabriel. I said in the article, I had Shedeur Sanders rated much higher than Dillon Gabriel on my big board. I know that you love Sanders as well. You had him QB1 in last year's draft. Did you have him QB1 or did you have him QB2? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
They're very close with Cam, but I had Sanders 1, yeah.
So you had Sanders 1. And so, like, we both liked Sanders a good amount more than we liked Dillon Gabriel. But the fact of the matter is, the way that Sanders plays currently is he likes to hold the ball on a little bit more. He plays better under pressure than Dillon Gabriel did, at least like throughout the preseason, and even going back to their last year at college, to be honest. And playing under pressure bodes well for a struggling Browns offensive line. I mean, the Browns have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL right now. They've given up the most total pressures with 77. They've given up the highest pressure percentage, and they have, I think it's the third highest pass blocking grade as a team at 40.3. I know the 40.3 number is correct, so I just can't remember where it was in the rankings. So you have to sort of look at this equation and say, Sanders plays better under pressure, but Dillon Gabriel gets the ball out of his hands a little bit quicker. I think the way the Browns offense is currently constructed, you would lean towards Gabriel being the better play, given how the offensive line is struggling, because you do have players that you could get the ball into their hands pretty quickly. Isaiah Bond is one of them. Harold Fannin Jr. is certainly one of them. Dylan Sampson out of the backfield. All of these are good quick hit options where there's playmaking ability to be had after the catch. And so I do agree with going with Gabriel first. We figured that they would, right? Because Gabriel's the 3rd round pick. Shedeur was the 5th round pick when it was all said and done. So clearly they had Gabriel higher on their big board. But we'll see what ends up happening in this game. I think a lot of people would look at this, and I think Cleveland just has an overall negative narrative to them just because they haven't won as a franchise in a long time. Sorry to our producer, Tyler, who had to listen to that. But I'm about to give you some praise here. I set it up like that on purpose because the Browns have one of, if not the best defense in the NFL. They also have the best defensive line right now in the NFL, or at least the best pass rush grade through the first 4 weeks. 90.3 pass rush grade. And Dalton, the reason why that matters in this game specifically is the Vikings pass block grade last week against the Steelers, 62.2. They gave up 14 total pressures. Ryan Kelly's in concussion protocol. Brian O'Neill's got a knee injury that's week to week. Donovan Jackson's already on IR right now. They are struggling on the offensive line. And a big reason why I was bullish on the Vikings going into this season is because in theory, when they were fully healthy, they had a good unit. They're not fully healthy at all whatsoever. And so instead, we just are much closer to the picture they were last year, albeit the team succeeded. The offensive line, especially the interior offensive line, was a tough scene for them. Now you're going up against Mason Graham, Malik Collins, who's having an unbelievable year or start to the year as a pass rusher. Myles Garrett speaks for himself. Isaiah McGuire, like, they can get after the quarterback. And so I did not really know where to go here, but I'm taking the Browns. I'm going to take the Browns 20-17 with this one being a close one. It's not even necessarily a Dillon Gabriel thing. I don't believe in Dillon Gabriel as much as I believed in, say, like the Jackson Dart upset call that I had last week for the Giants. But I just wonder if that defensive line is too much for what the Vikings are going to want to try to do on offense. And I have too much respect for what the Browns, are doing on the defensive side of the ball.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Don't worry here. You're actually not alone with this prediction. I'm going to take the bait also. I'm going to take Dillon Gabriel to get a win in his first. I've got it even lower scoring than you do because I think, look, the Vikings, they've had a hard time, not just pass protection, they've had a hard time running the ball too. 2 of the last 3 weeks, they've been under 80 yards rushing. So that's the offensive line and the effect that it has. Obviously, Aaron Jones is still out, but I think Dillon Gabriel and the Browns, a big thing is going to be, can they finish drives? Because Gabriel has generally played a lot better between the 20s than he has in the red zone throughout his college career, certainly. I have the Browns 16-13. I think this one's going to be ugly. You've got 2 really good defenses, and I think an X factor could be Quinshon Judkins for the Browns in their run game. He's looked really good through his first 3 games. The Vikings have been vulnerable in run defense in their 2 losses this season. I'm going to take the Browns in a low-scoring one as well.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I should feel good or bad about that with both of us taking the Browns. It's like, oh, okay, all right. In one sense, I'm not alone, and then I'm wondering, okay, are we looking at things, 2 rose-colored glasses with what could be for the Browns here? But I think that this sets up to. I think the Vikings' deficiencies are really going to hurt them this week, and we'll see how those backup offensive linemen are able to step up against a really, really tough test. Moving forward to Sunday afternoon, getting into the regular 1 p.m. Eastern slate. The Las Vegas Raiders are traveling to Indianapolis to take on the Indianapolis Colts, coming off of their first loss of the season against the Los Angeles Rams. And the Raiders, it's been a tough showing for Geno, I think, specifically through the first quarter of the season. He's just had amongst the up and downs that we know kind of come with him running the offense, too many downs. And that's what happened last week as well. Where do you want to start talking about this with the Raiders and the Colts?
I mean, we've talked a lot about Geno and the inconsistencies throwing the ball downfield. One week is great, the next week is bad, then the next week is great, then last week is bad again, right? But I think it's more the bigger story coming out of the Raiders offense last week was their ability to get Ashton Jeanty going in that great game he had against the Bears. Doubled his rushing total for the season, 144 yards last week against the Bears. I think the problem, though, and something I want to talk about now is this Colton Miller injury, high ankle sprain and / hairline fracture. He's going on IR. So now you lost by far your best offensive lineman on an offensive line that was already struggling to create yards before contact. I just want to throw out this split. So if you look in premium stats on PFF.com, under the rushing tab for every team in every game, there's a rushing direction tab as well that you can look and see where the Raiders have success, or any team has success, or any player has success. Where, which gap are they running through? Is it either side of the center? Is it off tackle? Is it between the tackles? Wherever. So when the Raiders' point of attack, is the left side of the offensive line, from the A gap, the left of the center, all the way out to the sideline on that side. 5.5 yards per carry this season. That's third best in the NFL on that side. When it's to the right of the center, 3.2 yards per carry, second worst in the NFL. And you have to think that Colton Miller, as the guy who was by far their highest graded run blocker, their best offensive lineman, he's got a big effect on that, right? So their ability to run off of that left side, right behind Colton Miller, behind Dylan Parham on that left side, that was really a big asset for them. And you saw that even last week, the big touchdown run, 64 yards from Ashton Jeanty. But it's been a consistent thing where they've been able to run left a little bit better than they have to the right. Now with Colton Miller out, you have to wonder if that takes a big hit, right? Because, again, he was by far your highest graded lineman, by far your highest graded run blocker, I think by almost 10 points. This is a problem. And I think for Geno to not have to take on the pressure of carrying this team with his arm, you wanted to keep the momentum with Jeanty going. I just question if that's going to happen without Miller for a while in the lineup now.
Yeah, what worries me about that is not just Miller not being in the lineup, but I think Stone Forsythe is the guy who's going to replace him at offensive tackle. And Forsythe can be a decent run blocker, not the impact run blocker that Cole Miller was, but Dalton, I get worried about the pass protection. I mean, when you look at the last couple of years for Forsythe when he was in Seattle, let's just look at the last 2 years specifically because he played over 400 snaps in both of those. 40.8 pass blocking grade and then a 41.3 pass blocking grade. I mean, that's where I get worried. You're going up against a technician like Latu on the other side, and Latu hasn't broken out a ton when it comes to the backfield production of sacks, but win rate, win percentage, pass rush grade, I think have been really good for him through the first quarter of the season. I know he splashed plenty as a rookie last year as well, and so that's where I get really worried for this team is how much pressure Geno might be under. Now, on the flip side, Walt, I'll give you a little hope in the chat here. The Colts coverage last week against the Rams was really bad. You look at Xavier Howard last week, 35.2 coverage grade, 7 catches allowed, 112 receiving yards allowed. Then you look at Mekhi Blackmon as well, 38.4 coverage grade, 3 catches allowed, 101 receiving yards there. And then when you look at the linebacker level as well, the linebackers, they struggled in coverage too. You got 2 of their starting linebackers, they have coverage grades below 30. So to me, I think this is going to be a shootout. Now, I don't think that it'll be as bad as it was last week for the Colts because, I think they're at home, and I just think there's a little bit of a boost and a confidence boost, comfort boost there. But Geno's going to be motivated, man. This is a guy who is a very competitive player, doesn't like to lose, and they're going to be putting their pedal in the metal. And I think that Chip Kelly is going to be doing that as well in this game. They know that they're going to have to score a good amount of points. If Cole Miller was in this game, I really might have picked the Raiders. But I just think that much of a subtraction is a little too much here. I do think this high scoring. I do think it's close. I'll go Colts 31, Raiders 28 here for this game.
Yeah, I do think for the Colts, a lot of that coverage last week was just straight up dealing with Puka Nacua. I mean, nobody's got an answer for that right now. He's been the best receiver in football through 4 weeks. And
I agree with you, but Colts have also struggled to cover tight ends over the middle as well. So it's not going to be a Nacua day, but it could be a big Brock Bowers day. And then we're talking about deep coverage stuff with Deontay Thornton. And so I really do feel like a recipe could exist for the Raiders to have a really potent passing attack day, even though it might not be quite what the Rams were the week before.
Oh, and that just comes down to Geno. I mean, in the 2 games where he's played well, he's completed 19 of 30 10-plus yard throws downfield, and the 2 weeks against the Chargers and last week that he didn't play well, he's 0 for 17 on those throws. So it's really, if Geno can throw the ball downfield well, then you are going to get a fun shootout between 2 pretty good offenses. I'm with you. The Colton Miller injury, that's a killer. That's a guy. That's maybe they're possibly the most indispensable player on offense, especially when you consider the drop off to Stone Forsythe, who I believe was the 2nd lowest graded tackle in the NFL last year. I've got the Colts too. I think they're going to put up points on this defense. I've got the Colts 31-21. I think Daniel Jones, he didn't play. Look, 2 bad throws last week deep down the field. They were great plays by Cam Curl, and then obviously the A.D. Mitchell fumble hurt him bad. But this Colts offense, I don't see a whole lot of fundamental issues with it, even coming out of the loss against the Rams. 31-21. I like the Colts offense in this game.
Brandon in the chat saying the descent of Daniel. Colts fall off starts this week. Here comes the Indiana Jones boulder.
Oh, wow. Wow, he's calling out the boulder. He's even got a reference to the movie.
I know, he's calling out the boulder.
Love that.
He's got the alliteration. He's got the nickname. He's got the villain.
I don't know. Isn't it? Well, what is it? Hold up. Isn't it Indiana Jones afraid of snakes? Isn't the Raiders used to have Ken? Isn't it Ken the Snake Stabler? Right? Maybe not that Stabler's anywhere near playing in this one, but why did it have to be snakes, Trev? Why? we always figure it out here, Chad.
Those are movies that were made before the year 2000.
Yeah, so I've seen it. Yeah.
So I know that you've seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Great movies, man. Harrison Ford, classic.
No, they are great movies. Those are movies. I've told you before. Like I have these gaps, or these really like weird, popular movies that I've never seen. Indiana Jones is one of them. Indiana Jones. I hadn't seen any of the Indiana Jones movies until like 3 years ago. But now I appreciate the greatness. So I can get the references. I can make cultural references here on this show. Giants are traveling to New Orleans. Very interested to hear what you have to say about this one. Giants coming off of a win with Jackson Dart. The Saints have looked competitive, but still don't have a win yet. If this one was in New York, I think people would usually be taking the Giants, but it's not. It is in New Orleans. So what are we talking about here? And then at the end of it, we're going to get to whether or not we think the Saints are going to get their first win of the season.
So we know the Saints have struggled to throw the football, obviously, between their pass protection not being great, and obviously their quarterback situation isn't great. Starting Spencer Rattler another week, maybe we'll see Tyler Shuck eventually. But I think last week against the Chargers, and all the story was about Jackson Dart and the offense, and obviously the defensive line dominating the Chargers with a lot of injuries. But to me, it's that their secondary, which they spent a lot of money on this offseason, they've spent a lot of resources to fix over the last 2 years. This was the first week last week that the Giants secondary looked like a more functional unit, right? Andrew Phillips obviously was the star of the show. He had an interception. We've seen Cordell Flott now is basically inserted as the starter over Deonte Banks. Paulson Adebo trying to figure out a new system. Holland and Nubin on the back end. 72.9 coverage grade last week for the Giants. Phillips had 1 interception. Dexter Lawrence with the interception at the line of scrimmage. That obviously helps a lot. And only 3 explosive plays allowed. One of them was at the very end of the game, the last play of the game, so that doesn't hurt you too much. Really, the only big mistake that they made was the big Quentin Johnson touchdown at the end of the first half. The Giants' secondary was a lot better in that game. And look, sometimes I criticize them for playing a lot of man-to-man coverage, but it worked for them last week, and we could see them take that same approach this week, although be careful with that because Spencer Rattler has been taken off scrambling a little bit. But I think if the Giants get another performance like this out of their secondary, knowing what we know about their defensive line and how they force quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly, and I think that's what happened to Justin Herbert last week. He didn't have time to stand back there for 3.5 seconds and chuck the ball downfield because that defensive line is coming at you. So again, you're always marrying the pass rush and coverage together, and they do affect each other's performances. Last week was the first time that we saw those two things really sync up against an opposing offense, and a darn good one with the Chargers, albeit they have offensive line injuries. I think a similar dynamic needs to be had if they're going to go on the road and get a win. Their secondary was good last week. I'm looking for them to stack good performances together.
Yeah, and I think that the Saints, you mentioned Rattler's rushing ability, but I think that it's been just a total team effort when it comes to rushing the ball pretty well. Quietly, the Saints have the 6th highest rushing grade of any team in the NFL at a 77.9. And then, when you look specifically at Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara, the grades aren't going to, blow you out of the water, but they have a lot of missed tackles forced, which showcases a lot of playmaking ability that we see between those two running backs. This is a team that doesn't have a ton of yards before contact. For as much as they have a good amount of rushing yards, their yards before contact are, tied for 23rd in the NFL. And so they're not necessarily getting a ton of help from the offensive line, but these running backs are still being playmakers when they get it. When you look at that versus this Giants team, Giants highest EPA per rush allowed this season. I would not have thought that would be the case for the Giants defensive line and just how this defense is built overall, but they have given up the highest EPA per rush average so far through 4 games. And then when you look at the Saints overall, their EPA per rush, they're 15th in the NFL. So the grades and the missed tackles force are a little bit better, but the EPA has been a little bit lower. I think game scripts kind of go into that a little bit, and maybe running the ball when it maybe wasn't as advantageous because they know they have to stay balanced because they can't really get out of that identity or they don't have a chance. But I think it does lean into this game being close and really giving the Saints a chance. So I think this game will be pretty close, even though a lot of people I think look at how Jackson Dart was able to play last week. I hope that he is fully healthy and feeling good for this upcoming game because, the combination of him and Cam Scatterbo as a two-headed rushing attack for the Giants, I think, was definitely formidable. And they will need it to be again with no Malik Neighbors, with him now out for the season. So I think this will be a close game no matter what. I think a lot of factors go into this being a close game. No Malik Neighbors on the Giants side of things, them struggling to defend the run, the Saints being able to run the ball pretty well, and then this game being in New Orleans. Dalton, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Saints in this one, 24-21. It's going to be a really close game, but I'll give it to the Saints being at home, getting their first win of the season.
All right. I mean, the Saints, look, we don't think they're going to have too many opportunities to win ball games. They got a couple winnable, maybe ball games later. But, and listen, Trev, what do we say around here? Winnable games are only winnable if you win them. See that? That's
very true.
It happens once a week.
Proud of you leading into it.
We got to work it in once a week. Okay, but here's the thing for me. The Giants, and it's good you mentioned the Saints run game. I think the defensive line hasn't been the big concern, but they're struggling to tackle, and their second-level guys have been kind of hurting them so far when it comes to run defense. Tyler Nubin's missed 4 tackles in run defense. Micah McFadden has not played hardly at all this year. That's a starting linebacker. That's what they rely on him for. But I think a big concern for me with the Saints is still this offensive line, and now Cesar Ruiz is going to be out for a while, the right guard, and having to block Dexter Lawrence on the inside is never fun, and Abdul Carter broke out in a big way. I think the Giants D-line controls this game. I think they find a way to run the football again with Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart. I think it's going to be a hard-fought defensive kind of game because Brandon Staley's got the Saints defense at least playing respectable football, right? And obviously the Giants still don't have Malik Neighbors, but I'll take the Giants 20-17.
Sports Debate Arena giving us the $5 super chat. We appreciate you getting in on the show and the super chat, of course. It's question, though. Where would y'all put Cam Scatterbo in the Offensive Rookie of the Year race 4 weeks in? So I just looked this up. Right now, he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He is 9th in overall odds for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He is behind Emeka Egbuka, Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, Jackson Dart, his own teammate, of course, Tyler Warren, Tetairoa McMillan, Quinshon Judkins, Cam Ward, and then it is Cam Scatterbo if we're looking at these numbers or these odds over at DraftKings. Plus 2,500 is a pretty good number to get Cam Scatterbo at.
Yeah, I think it is. I wouldn't have it.
If you think that he's going to be fully healthy the whole year, I don't know if he's going to win it, but it doesn't feel like Cam Ward was, I think, everybody's default pick just because he was going to start, and it can often be a quarterback-leaning award, as a lot of awards are, to be honest. But the Titans are so bad. I don't think that Cam Ward's going to win this award. Like, they would have to have 2, 3, 4 significant Cam Ward took over wins in order for him to win it at this point. So I like him at that 2,500 number, Cam Scatterboot. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good number. He's going to get the volume in that offense, but I think you have some other guys that are going to get it too. He shouldn't be ninth. I think he should be probably top 5 or 6. Judkins has looked good in his first few games. Ginty obviously broke out last week, and he's going to continue to get work. Hampton's obviously going to get work. And then I think you look at the receiving threats as well. Teterow, McMillan, Emeka Ibuka. I think Tyler Warren should be very much near the top of that list for all the work he does in that Colts offense, both receiving and blocking. So I think he shouldn't be ninth. I would put him ahead of the 2 quarterbacks. I don't think you're getting a quarterback to win it this year, especially now with Dart not having Malik Neighbors for the rest of the year. I think, though, Scadaboo's a fun dark horse because he's going to get a lot of volume, and I think it's going to look a lot like last week the rest of the year. The Giants are going to run the ball a lot.
I agree. I think that he should be 6th at worst right now. I would put, through the first 4 weeks, I would still put Ibuka and McMillan and Warren ahead of him when it comes to just receiving production, receiving grades, just overall stats, how much they're emphasizing the offense. And then I would still put Genty and Hampton ahead of him, honestly, just because I think they have a little bit more hype and push to the narrative of them potentially winning the award. But Cam Scatterboot is right after that. I would put him ahead of Jackson Dart, ahead of Quinshon Judkins, ahead of Cam Ward. He's 6th to me at worst, and I think that you can make an argument of him even maybe being a little bit higher on that list because he's also somebody that they're going to use him in the receiving game as well. Like he's not just going to be a bruiser type of running back. I mean he'll get in the end zone, he'll give you those crazy yards after contact plays that we've already seen this season that we saw a lot at Arizona State, but like he'll also give you some work as a receiver too. So I do like that. I do like that there. Now so we're sitting here talking about it on the show. We're doing what we shouldn't be doing because remember on Monday, you called out the fact that Puka Nacua was plus 50,000 to win MVP, and then an hour after the show got done, his odds got cut in half, and now it's 25,000. So maybe we should be saving this stuff for after the show to make sure if we want to get a bet in, we can get a bet in.
Oh, no.
We got to learn. We got to learn.
Certainly, whoever asked that question there is now feeling like, okay, at least there's some value on Scatterboot. He's going to be the one that goes and puts a bunch of money on it and moves the line is what's going to happen.
It's true. Could have taken the $5 that he gave us for the super chat. Maybe we need to just go put it on Cam Scatterboot to win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Oh, see that now? Now you're talking. See that? That makes sense.
And then if we win, we could throw a pizza party afterwards. He's invited.
Well, that's the answer. Pizza's the answer to everything, Trev. We all know
that's why I said it.
Exactly.
That's why I said it. Okay, Cowboys and Jets. Your New York Jets. This one's in New York. Cowboys coming off of a thrilling tie. I have to say it like that. Jets coming off a loss. How do we feel about this one? Where do you want to start?
Well, in theory, if the Jets can stop fumbling the ball and committing penalties and just in general making mistakes that hurt themselves, because honestly, they are a handful of plays from being 3-1 instead of 0-4, but those are the things that lose you football games and make you a bad team. In theory, the Jets' blueprint of wanting to run the hell out of the ball with Breece Hall, and Braylon Allen's probably now going to be out for a while, so Breece Hall's going to be the workhorse, and Justin Fields obviously being back at quarterback, that has a big effect on your run game, and the Jets lead the league in read option rate, but in theory, the Jets should be able to run the ball on the Cowboys, because as we've talked about forever, the Cowboys' run defense is also bad. The secondary's caught a lot of flack lately, but they can't defend the run either. The Jets right now, 10th in run blocking grade, because they've got a pretty good offensive line, 13th in impact run block percentage, which is your positively graded run block rate. And then they have the 4th best negatively graded run block rate percentage there. Defeated run block percentage is just the same on the other side. 4th lowest in the league on that end, so that makes them the 4th best. And the Cowboys, look, we've said it. I think they've been a little bit better on the D-line. Kenny Clark actually has gone in there and helped them a little bit on the interior, but the problem for the Cowboys is when teams get on the second level, their linebackers are struggling. Kenneth Murray, Jack Sanborn back there, that's the problem they're having now. The last couple years, it's been the first level, that defensive tackle position. It's been really rough to watch. This year, that's a little better. Clark and Odighizu on the inside doing okay, both in the mid to high 60s of run defense grades, but they're linebackers. This was the other concern with the Cowboys, is that they just don't have good enough linebackers to fill in the gaps behind those defensive linemen. So theoretically, the Jets have an opportunity once again to run the ball. But they have to not fumble it at the 1-yard line. They have to not fumble kick returns. They have to not commit 13 penalties. If the Jets don't beat themselves, their offense does have a chance to succeed in this game because they had a chance to succeed against Miami this past Monday, and they gave the football away again 3 times. So the big mistakes are killing them right now on a down-to-down basis. The Jets' offense doesn't look that bad, especially in the run game, and they have an advantage. They have at least an opportunity, I should say, to score some points in this game on the ground.
This game could be closer than people think for the reasons that you mentioned. I want to shout out Dak Prescott, who is playing at an unbelievable level. And I think when people look at the passing grade for Prescott, 90.4 this season through 4 weeks, that's the second highest in the NFL behind only Matthew Stafford. Now, I think the natural thing to say is, well, okay, yeah, I mean, CeeDee Lamb and you watch George Pickens going off. Well, okay. I hear those, and I had those same exact questions myself because, CeeDee Lamb's obviously not in the lineup, and I just wonder how much it might be a feast or famine with George Pickens going up against Sauce Gardner in this game, right? If Sauce is able to, have a really good game against George Pickens, what is the Cowboys' offense after that? Well, turns out it's still pretty damn good. Dak Prescott's passing grade when not throwing to either CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens is still a 90. It's still an elite passing grade so far this season, no matter who he is throwing it to, whether it's wide receiver 3, 4, 5, tight end 2, tight end 1, like whoever it is, he still has an elite passing grade when doing so. And when you look at the Jets, no corner or safety has a season coverage grade above 63 this season. So I tried to think about this game, and I was like, well, in theory, Dak Prescott has, I believe, the highest passing grade under pressure. So you can talk about the Cowboys' offensive line and it being inconsistent and the injuries that they've had, but if Dak Prescott's out under pressure, that's no different than the first 4 weeks, and he has performed extremely well when he's been under pressure. Then I go to, all right, well, what if the Jets shut down George Pickens with Sauce Gardner? Because you could absolutely believe that. I still believe the Cowboys are going to win this game. I still believe that the script is there for them to win it. And as long as Dak is playing the way that he is, I'm going to take him in this game. I got Cowboys 24, Jets 14. I think the Jets could score more than that. It could be like 17, 20, something like that. But ultimately, I think the Cowboys are going to score low to mid 20s. And I think that the Jets are going to either be in the high teens, low 20s, something like that. I just think that I can't bet against the way that Dak Prescott's playing right now, especially looking up the game script that I did. And it's still favoring him to have a good game in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dak Prescott is the reason they can and will win this game. I have it higher scoring than you do. I think the Jets will have some success because this Cowboys defense is still kind of a mess, but I have the Cowboys 30-24. I think a big thing that's hurting the Jets right now is a couple of injuries on defense. One is Jermaine Johnson up front, but I think the big one, Quincy Williams being out at linebacker, and something that concerned me when I watched this Jets team, these backups in the preseason, they have no depth at linebacker at all behind Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood. Sherwood is still out there, but when Quincy Williams got hurt, that really worried me with their front seven because they just don't have anything behind him that's anything close to the level of production that Williams gives them, and he's still going to be out for a while. So I think that's a major problem, both in run defense and in the middle of the field as far as coverage goes. Cowboys 30, Jets 24.
Super Pony, give us a $1.99 super chat. We appreciate you. But the message, Colts are not giving up 28. Trevor's a hater. I'm not a hater. I just think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I think Indiana Jones is going to ball out. I think Geno's going to bounce back. He's going to play pissed off and motivated. I think the Colts really struggled last week in coverage. Just saying it's going to be a high-scoring game. Not a hater. Let's pick the Colts to win.
And look out. Like you mentioned, Leatu Latu's coming. He's coming, and there's no Colton Miller. That is a problem. He's been really good this year.
I know. Hold on. What are you trying to tell me for? I said that. I brought that up.
Well, maybe you didn't take enough stock in it.
Maybe not.
You're the guy you're the king of stock up, stock down, aren't you? Isn't that your whole thing?
So shouldn't you trust me with the appropriate amount of stock?
I don't know.
See, got him.
I don't know.
Got his ass, folks.
We're gonna have to figure out in this here Trevor stock market.
Did you give us a score?
30-24, Dallas.
30-24. Okay, just wanted to make sure that we got that in there. The Broncos traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles undefeated on the season. It hasn't always looked pretty. Hasn't been as dominant as it was last season, but undefeated is undefeated. They're going up against a Broncos team that has been up and down this season. They've been competitive in their games, but coming off of a big win this past weekend against a Bengals team that's really reeling. So, we'll see how much they can sort of take from that and actually apply it to a really good team. If this game was in Denver, I think a lot of people would feel better about how competitive it's going to be, how close it's going to be, and how we could potentially get the Broncos to win this game. But it is in Philadelphia. I think that certainly goes against them in this one. What do you want to talk about, Dalton? You want to talk about the Eagles side of things or the Broncos side of things?
I'm going to take the Eagles offense, and obviously a big story this week has been the cryptic tweets and all of that from A.J. Brown and his usage and his ability to get the football in this offense the way the Eagles are running it. And, if you looked at this matchup, say in the preseason, you go, wow, you're going to get these Eagles wide receivers, Brown and Smith, and Jalen Hurts throwing the ball against a dynamic Broncos secondary and all the corners they have. They've got Surtain and Riley Moss and Jahdae Barron, Jaquan McMillan, and the Brandon Jones at safety and all of that. And then you look at that same matchup right now, and you've got those two units kind of underachieving a bit. The Eagles wide receivers, in part because, yes, Jalen Hurts has been inconsistent with his arm and the entire offense has been inconsistent, but the Eagles wide receivers are 23rd in receiving grade right now, yet the Broncos cornerbacks are 21st in coverage grade. They have not played fantastic football in the secondary, and they've been a little bit lucky beyond the surface level numbers because they have seen the most off-target incompletions from quarterbacks this season. So I think when you look at Pat Surtain not quite playing like the defensive player of the year, Riley Moss, we even saw this past Monday against Cincinnati, losing some contested situations to T. Higgins. Jahdae Barron's barely playing. He's playing 17, 18 snaps a game. It's really been Jaquan McMillan in the slot, so the first-round pick not playing much. This Broncos cornerback room, look, they run a lot of man coverage. They get exposed sometimes one-on-one. And honestly, I think in general, their coverage schemes at times are kind of easy for a quarterback to see, especially a veteran quarterback, and you kind of know what's in front of you. If they're sitting single high, they're going to stay in it. If they're sitting in too high, they're going to stay in it. So I think Vance Joseph could mix it up a little bit more and help his defensive backs out a little bit. But I think the best part of this Broncos defense has been their pass rush, and if their pass rush disrupts quarterbacks early in the count, then their secondary can play better because they don't have to cover as long. But if it's not getting there, I've seen some struggles from this Broncos cornerback group that I think we expected a lot more production out of. This is going to be an interesting matchup when you've got two struggling units, the Eagles passing offense and the Broncos pass defense, at least on the back end of it. I wonder who comes out on top because that could decide the game.
Dalton.
Oh, boy.
If Bo Nix didn't look so bad in the first 2 weeks of the season, I think I'd be taking the Broncos in this game. And I'll explain why in a second. But to be honest with you, everything on the Broncos side of the ball just comes down to Nix. I mean, he's had games those first two games of the season, he was so poor in passing grade and turning the ball over and turnover-worthy plays and missing open receivers, and he just low on target percentage. It was just to the point where the floor was too low for him. Now, the last couple of weeks, it has been better. And of course, against the Bengals, it was a lot better. He had the two big time throws and the one turnover worthy play, and he just looked better. They looked more in control. They looked more confident. But, you're hosting a team that's far inferior to you at this point in time. Sorry to our producers behind the scenes who are Bengals fans. And it was at home in a primetime game. So they felt very comfortable in that game. And so they should have won that game by a good amount. The thing is, though, what I really want to talk about is sort of a point that you made there, and I want to expound upon it a little bit. You talked about how good the Broncos are at getting pressure. Specifically, I want to talk about how good the Broncos are at getting pressure with either 4 or 3 rushers, so not blitzing. When they are rushing just 4 or 3 players, they have the third most total pressures with 70, and they have the fourth best pass rush win percentage as a team at 61.9. Now, why does that matter? That matters because we talked about this on the review show on Monday. Jalen Hurts really struggled in the second half of that game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because they didn't blitz him. They rushed 4. Now, the fourth rusher sometimes came from different spots. It's not like it was just the defensive lineman every time. Sometimes they're dropping a defensive lineman, they're throwing a linebacker in there, a cornerback blitzes, maybe one of the defensive tackles drops because Todd Bowles likes to get funky like that. But the story stayed the same. They rushed 4 players, and they dropped 7 into coverage. 7 or more, 7 or 8 into coverage when they were rushing 3 or 4 players. Jalen Hurts had I believe it was a 33.7 passing grade in the second half of that game when Todd Bowles started to do that. Completed 0 of 8 passes in the second half of that game. And I went back and I watched all of those dropbacks that Jalen Hurts had. The theme for all of them was that not just that the Bucs were dropping more guys into coverage and having more players to account for Jalen Hurts when he's scanning the field, but it was the fact that they were still getting pressure. Not all 4 guys were winning on a single play, but most of the time, at least one of them was winning pretty quickly and getting Jalen off the spot so that not only was he having to scan the field, but he was having to adjust to pressure somewhere. So for the Broncos, that is into their wheelhouse, given how much success they have had rushing only 4 and 3 guys and still being able to affect the quarterback. That is the script that really put Jalen Hurts into flux in the second half of that Buccaneers game, and that is something that the Denver Broncos have the ability to do. If Nix didn't have as poor of a start to the season as he did, I think I would be taking the Broncos in this one. But it's hard for me, with the volatility that Nix has showed, to still pick against Philadelphia in Philadelphia with their offensive line being as talented and as good as it can be, even against a good Broncos front. So I'm laying out the script. I'm laying out the script to say if the Broncos win, it's not going to shock me. But I'm too I'm too big of a coward right now to actually make the pick. I'm going to go Eagles 27, Broncos 20.
I think it will be close. I think the inconsistencies we've seen from the Eagles offense will keep the Broncos in this game and give them a shot to win it for sure. And Bo's got to be safer with the football. 7 turnover-worthy plays through the first 4 weeks of the season. And I think he's got to be very, very careful messing around the middle of the field, that intermediate range, with Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell sitting there at linebacker waiting for that ball to come to him. I have the Eagles 23-20. I think, as we've seen from Philadelphia, just kind of like we saw from Kansas City last year, they just find their way through these one-score games despite some of their flaws and inconsistencies. But I have to wonder if the Eagles are going to put, after everything we've heard about A.J. Brown the last week, if they're going to put an increased emphasis on that with all the Broncos man coverage that they run, if they can find ways just for Brown and Devontae Smith to win those one-on-one opportunities. If at any point, if we see Surtain shadowed on Brown, or if we see Brown at all on Riley Moss like we saw with T. Higgins last week, will they take advantage of that? I just think the Eagles, as they have been doing so far this year and really over the past calendar year, I think they're going to find a way to win this one 23-20.
Walt is saying in the chat, there's no way this game is close. I don't know about that. I don't know about, again, like if Nix is throwing turnover-worthy plays all over the place, you have Quinion Mitchell and Cooper Jean and certainly the linebackers as well who have been covering really well, then yeah, I think this game could be a blowout. But I'm going to say it's pretty close. I'm going to say he takes care of the ball a little bit better, and because of that, I think that it has a good formula to be closer than a lot of people think.
And keep in mind, the Eagles have played in 4 one-score games out of 4, and the Broncos have played in 3 out of 4, aside from this past weekend with Cincinnati. That's the only game between the two teams at all that weren't one-score games. So it's probably, to me, it's going to be tight.
The Miami Dolphins traveling to Carolina to take on the Carolina Panthers. What a barn burner this one is on paper. But, Dalton, somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose.
Not necessarily.
Don't you get.
No, they don't. No, they don't have to. Nobody has to.
You don't do it. No.
And one.
Somebody's got to win.
More and one's coming.
And somebody's got to lose. I'm sticking with it. You want to talk about the Dolphins? Or you want to talk about the Panthers?
I will tell you exactly why these two teams are going to go and end in a tie. Look, I think. I think, look, it's
cut his mic.
Obviously, I'm sure they want to. Obviously, the Dolphins' passing game is going to suffer now with Tyreek Hill out for the rest of the year. But I think if you're the Panthers, one, you can adjust with that, and you go, okay, that works to our advantage of it. They still have Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, some other guys in the passing game that are dangerous. But I think you look at the run game now, and you focus on Devon Achane and what the Dolphins do well. Look, the offensive line has not been great, haven't been a great run-blocking unit, but if there's one thing Devon Achane can still do, it is get to the edge. And even when you talk about Ollie Gordon possibly getting carries in this game, in the run game, getting to the edge, the Dolphins, when they get off tackle, have the second best rushing grade in the NFL, 6th in yards per carry, 2nd in explosive run rate. Look, they have speed. What are they going to do with it? They're going to get off tackle. They're going to get out in space. They're going to use that outside zone scheme. They're going to use some pin pull and pull linemen out there and get out in space. That's what the Dolphins always want to do in the run game anyway, whether they have Tyreek Hill on the outside or not. The Panthers struggle when it comes to preventing teams getting off tackle. The edge defenders have struggled, and the big one to me is that their linebackers are last in the NFL in run defense grade. Trev, we've talked about their struggles in coverage over the middle of the field, but it is working laterally in the run game as well. Christian Roseboom, Trevin Wallace. I think their defensive line as a whole has been better than they were last year, because last year they were just atrocious. I think they've been a better unit holding their gaps, but the linebackers have to get over the top. And there's too many times, especially when you talk about all the motion and everything Mike McDaniel can throw at you to kind of deceive those linebackers in the run game. That's going to be a big problem. If the Dolphins can run off tackle in this game and the linebackers aren't better for Carolina, there's a road for them to have success on the ground with Devon Achane, with possibly Ollie Gordon, and then eventually you get in the bootleg game and play action and things like that for Tua. I just think that's where it is for me right now. This Panthers defense, when you look at, if you're going to narrow one spot, it's not a great defense all the way around, but if you're going to narrow down one spot that you have to attack both in the run and pass game, it's absolutely their linebackers.
Yeah, I would agree. The linebacker has been a major issue for the Carolina Panthers the entire season, and I really don't know if it's getting better. The over-under 45.5 number, that's a high number for this game because the Dolphins, when targeting Tyreek Hill this season, 0.642 EPA per pass, okay? Pretty dang high. When they are targeting anyone other than Tyreek Hill, that EPA per play is almost a 0. So it goes from over half a point in EPA per play when targeting Tyreek Hill to basically nothing. And that's receivers. I'm not counting Devon Achane. Well, actually, I think Devon Achane was in this category as well. I think it's all receivers for this one that I did for Miami specifically. So it's basically not like their passing game is almost nothing without Tyreek Hill, or it has been for most of this season. Now, if Jalen Waddle's sort of playing that role, maybe he gets a little bit of that involved, but this Dolphins passing attack has not been good. So what you just said, if they can't run the ball, if they can't use Devon Achane as the ultimate X-factor weapon in this game, I don't know how Miami moves the ball and scores points in this one. Certainly enough for the over-under to be 45.5. And on the Panthers side of things, they have 33 explosive plays of 10 yards or more. That is 31st in the NFL. Surprisingly enough, the Philadelphia Eagles are the only team that has less than the Carolina Panthers. So you're talking about two teams that really have failed 4 games into the year to be explosive and move the ball in a meaningful and consistent way. I think this is a very low-scoring game. I'm going to give it to Carolina because I think they sort of get back to running the ball a little bit better this week against a Dolphins defensive line that has looked, it feels like, disinterested at times, not motivated at times, freelancing a little bit too much. We go back to those early couple of weeks that we talked about. Bradley Chubb talked about guys not being in the right spots and freelancing a little bit too much and just not working together as a team. I think that Carolina will get back to running the ball a little bit more. I think they'll try to push the ball on occasion, but this really isn't just, it's really an offense that really isn't just built for those explosive plays. I think Carolina wins this one. 21-17 is the score I have here, but I wonder if it's even a little bit more low scoring than that. The only reason why I don't think it's more low scoring is because of sort of what you mentioned with the defense. Certainly on Carolina's side of things, right? I believe that they've really struggled in a couple of different areas. So I'll go Panthers 21, Dolphins 17, but this is a game of two very struggling offenses right now.
No, I'm with you. I think the Panthers really need a home win here against a Dolphins team that has struggled throughout the season and now just lost their best offensive weapon. I don't have it as a tie, but I have it pretty darn close because I think this and Vikings-Browns are probably the two hardest games of the week to pick. I also have Carolina, but I have them 24-23. I think a big factor is they need to run the football. I know Terron McMillan's been great in the passing game, but I think Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle and maybe even Trevor Etienne could be a big factor. You mentioned that defensive line with the Dolphins that has looked kind of disinterested. And look, last week, the Jets ran for, I believe, over 180 yards on Miami. Also, if they can get out and run the football and have some balance in their offense, Carolina, I think they can be okay in this game, but I'm also still worried about, even without Tyreek Hill, them giving up explosive plays on defense. With Jalen Waddle, with Malik Washington, I think is a big factor. Devon Achane, I do think is a serious threat in this game to have a big day, but tight game, going to be probably a little bit weird, but I'll take the Panthers at home.
If Carolina loses this game, they're in trouble. This has to be the best Chuba Hubbard game of the season.
Yes, I think they need to lean on him. Yeah,
you have to be. Not only do you have to in effort, you have to in execution. They have to be able to run the ball against Miami. They have to be able to showcase this one at home. Or in the power ranking episode I did on NFLSC on Monday, I have the Panthers 31. The only team that I have below them right now is the Tennessee Titans, and if they can't run the ball against Miami, I mean that's
Their
Man,
their next
it's gonna
three,
start to get ugly.
their next three are Dolphins, Cowboys, Jets. They got to get at least one, if not two wins. They got
At
to
least
find
one,
they got to
if not
find
two. I
some
agree
wins.
with you.
They got to find some wins in that mix, because after that, Bills, Packers, there's Falcons, Niners, Rams. There's a lot of tough games. They get the Bucks 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season. They need to find some wins here, because if they're 1-6 coming out of this stretch, it could get ugly.
Yeah, really could. The previews march on, but before we get to our next game, there's some things that school maybe didn't teach you growing up, like how to handle the financial world exactly the way that you needed to, or that you have to have a plan right now that gives you success for later. That includes with your kids. Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them, helps prepare for a great financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With the Kids Investment Account for Fabric, you guys can start investing in your child's future today. Kids can't invest while they're minors, but a UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments so much more time to grow. Whole thing is online, and setting up an account could take you as little as just 5 minutes. Then you get started investing with as little as $1 a day. Manage your child's account and monitor those investments right from your phone. You can take it out and use them, when they're younger for books, summer camps, tuition, sports, things like that. When they're adults, maybe you're helping them buy their first car, buy their first house, start a business, whatever that looks like to you. There's no contribution limits to it. It's got multiple tax advantages. Funds are SIPC insured up to $500,000, and there's no commission fees to it, just a low flat monthly maintenance fee. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. The portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. You can learn more at meetfabric.com. Ravens, Texans. Should have been an epic matchup. Turn back the clock a month and a half ago. Week 5. Texans at Ravens. People would have been going crazy for this one. Now,
Trevor. Here's speaking of the clock. You know what time it is in Baltimore, right?
Is this a Cooper Rush joke or what is it?
Yes, it's rush hour. I just got an even louder boo from Eli than I did last week. Just so we know, I lost him.
No, that one's good. That one's good.
That was better than the ransom one. Okay, good.
That one's better than the ransom one. That one was better.
There you go.
You're getting better. The puns are getting better, which probably means they're getting worse, which means the boos from Eli are going to get louder until the soundproof glass actually shatters at some point.
He's going to walk out. He's going to walk out here with the umbrella and just hook me right. You have to do one of these weeks. You have to do the rest of the preview yourself, I'm sure.
Nah, you can't leave me like that. All right, so the injury list for the Baltimore Ravens is robust. I mean, we've got Nnamdi Madubuike is already on IR. Ronnie Stanley is injured. Lamar is obviously injured. Roquan Smith, Kyle Van Noy, Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, all injured. This is tough. This is a time in the year where they need to be healthy and get wins. This needs to be bounce back time. We talked about last week. One of them or the Kansas City Chiefs is going to be 1-3. It's Baltimore. They're 1-3. This should be a game that they should win against a Texans team that's really struggling. But I'm curious, what do you think about this matchup? Where are we starting with this one? And we'll get into who you think wins.
We are actually going to start with what the Texans need to do to find a way to get out of Baltimore with a win. And if they do, then you start to look at the Texans. You go, okay, they're 2-3. You feel a little better, two wins in a row. Maybe a functional offense finally here at some point. But you have to like the way, and it was still a struggle of a game against Tennessee last week. That game was 6-0 after 3 quarters, and then they took over in the 4th. But you have to like the way the Texans ran the ball last week and committed to it. I'm going to list you off a set of numbers here from Houston last week. 69.6 rushing grade, 35 carries, 129 yards, 86 after contact, 9 first downs, 1 touchdown. Every single one of those numbers on the screen there was a season high for the Houston Texans. Woody Marks obviously making a huge impact, just giving you some sort of feat, some sort of speed in this run game. Look, Nick Chubb's a great player. He's been a great player for a long time, but he's slowing down, and the Texans need some speed in this backfield. Woody Marks gave it to him last week, and you're talking about playing against a Ravens team this week that is dead last in the NFL in run defense grade. And now, like you mentioned, no Van Noy, no Matabike, no Roquan Smith this week. This Ravens run defense is extremely vulnerable. I think actually the most important number there for Houston was the 35 carries. Just get the football going on the ground. Nick Caley, get down ahead. Look, I think this game is going to be ugly and defensive, and the Texans still struggle to pass protect, and the passing game needs some work. But if they can balance it out a little and just give you even the threat of a decent run game with Woody Marks, then I think that it changes the dynamic of this offense a little bit, because they still want to put tight ends on the field and run the football. If they can do that, they can control the pace of the game like they did against Tennessee last week. They can continue to knock on the door, and like what happened last week, eventually the door will open and you can blow the doors off of the game and eventually win it 26-0 like you did against Tennessee. Now, I don't think this game will be 26-0, but it's the idea that, okay, we can get down in the run game and be physical and commit to it, and it can be functional.
This might be the quickest game of the week because both of these teams are just going to want to run the football, right? You talked about how much success the Texans had last week with Woody Marks and leaning into him in the run game. And honestly, how much of that has been missing from the Texans offense throughout the first portion of the season. So having success doing that last week, they're going to continue to try to lean into it a little bit more against the worst run defense team in the NFL through the first 4 weeks. And on the other side of things, the Ravens, like a big part of their offensive identity has been running the football. And yet over the last 3 weeks, they have just a 61.5 rushing grade. Now, fumbles go into that, certainly, but also their struggles as a team. Now you don't even have a Lamar. Now it's rush hour. You've got to, they are going to give the ball to Derrick Henry as much as they possibly can in this game, and they're just going to try to smash their way to a victory at this point. So I feel like this might be the quickest game that we have the entire week because both of these teams just want to run the football. I don't know how many passing attempts we're going to get in this game. I don't know how many high degree of difficulty passes we're going to get in this game. But I feel as though there's probably not going to be a lot of incompletions. And I feel like it's going to, at some point, I feel like we got a running clock here in this game. I think it's going to be low scoring, certainly. I still think the Texans offensive line, even though they were a little bit better last week, like they're just not a great unit overall. When you look at the Texans tackling versus Derrick Henry, they're top half of the NFL when it comes to missed tackle percentage versus the run, and so like they're not terrible in that regard. So I think that they'll be up to the challenge. Certainly that defensive line, how the defensive ends are going to play with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Can those guys be game wreckers? Can Henry To'oTo'o? Can Azeez Al-Shaair? Like, can those guys be difference makers as tacklers at the second level? All of that to me is really important. But ultimately, the Ravens are reeling, man. So many of their best players are not even going to be out there this weekend, or at least if they are, they're not going to be anywhere near 100%. I'm going to go Texans 20, Ravens 13, but I think this is a low-scoring affair. The over-under on this one is 40.5, and I even feel like it could be significantly lower than that, given how these teams have played through the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, this is tough to pick because I do see, there's still a scenario here where Derrick Henry could win the Ravens this game. Structurally, the Texans defense, it's a bad matchup for them to play this Ravens offense with the way they want to run the ball right downhill, all the four-man fronts the Texans are in, all the multiple tight end sets the Ravens use all the time. I think the Ravens could have success running the ball in this game as well, but if Derrick Henry doesn't tee off for at least 120, we think, find a way to balance out this offense and make Cooper Rush's life easy. I think that for both of these teams, first down is going to be incredibly important because, look, the Texans have not been good in third and long situations because they can't pick up blitzes at all and things in obvious passing situations. And if you're the Ravens, you just don't want Cooper Rush in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 against this pass defense because it's the best part of the Texans team still. I'm with you. Defensive game, going to be ugly, probably going to go by quick with not a high play count, 17-13 Houston.
Super Pony gave us another super chat not too long ago. $4.99 this time. Appreciate you once again giving us a super chat here. We got 2 points from him that we need to discuss here. First one says, I don't think that Dave Canales is the offensive mind that we thought he was. That was the first point. And then he says, A.J. Brown complaining about not getting the ball when his team is 4-0 isn't a good look. Breaking, hot off the press, wide receiver doesn't like the fact that he's not getting the football. Super Pony, I'm not going after you by saying that, but I feel like that's every single wide receiver, no matter what. And for as much as I know people will say, hey, A.J. Brown should just, shut up and just be cool with the fact that they're 4-0, we have talked about this with the Eagles. Like, yeah, they're 4-0. I'm not trying to take any sort of win or success away from them. But I just mentioned they have the least amount of explosive plays in the NFL this season, of 10 yards or more. So it's not even the 15 yards or more that we talk about in the passing game. I just looked at 10 yards or more. They have the least amount of those plays in the NFL so far this season. Not connecting with A.J. Brown, big reason why, of course, because he's a big play guy, but where AJ is probably complaining about it more so from his own standpoint. He's not entirely wrong in the fact that they do need to get him more involved. They do need to be more explosive. And if this team is going to be back-to-back Super Bowl champions, they have to be more explosive in what they do, whether that's through A.J. Brown or somebody else. Naturally, I think it will be, but that's why it's like, yeah, I think that A.J. is probably coming from a more of an A.J. Brown side of things, I should say, but he's not entirely wrong about not being happy with the lack of explosives there in Philadelphia.
No, you're right. Look, wins are not a wide receiver stat, right? Wide receivers get paid to catch the football and rack up yards, so I get it from A.J.'s perspective. And to be honest with you, when you look at the Eagles, look, the hardest thing to do is continue to find ways to improve while you're winning, while you're on this 20 out of 21 winning streak and just won a Super Bowl and you're 4-0 now and all that. I think anybody who's watched any Philadelphia Eagles games this year knows they've played, on the offense, B- football, if we're being honest. They have not played great offensive football. They've won all 4 of these games by 1 score. And to be honest with you, this is the same conversation we were having last year when the Chiefs were winning all these 1-score games. It's like, well, they're getting by. They're finding ways. They're blocking field goals. It's the same thing. So, and the Eagles have more talent than that Chiefs offense did last year. When you have A.J. and Devontae, Saquon, the offensive line, even, obviously the Chiefs have Mahomes, and you would take him over Jalen, but they have a boatload of talent. And they should be playing better offense than they're playing right now. So, look, is it great for it to be as publicized as it is with A.J. Brown? Not necessarily, but I do get it. They need to play better on offense if they want to win a championship again.
Yep. And then on the point about Canales, yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. We might be having a deeper philosophical talk about Canales depending on how the rest of the Carolina Panthers season goes. But I talked about this when he was hired. Like it was a risky hiring when it was made. And I don't necessarily say that as anything personally against Dave Canales, but he's coming off of his first year as a play caller, as an offensive coordinator. And I've mentioned this a bunch of times. Like, yeah, it was successful in Tampa, but it's not like Liam Cohen the year after, his fingerprints on the offense were much more noticeable than that of what Canales was the year before. And so Canales was always a little bit of going out on a limb type of a hire, because you hired a young offensive coordinator and you hoped that he was sort of this like next hotshot, brilliant, genius guy to really help out a team that have been devoid of consistent explosiveness and creativity and just offensive ingenuity and everything. And I think that Carolina's struggles on the offensive side of the ball are multifaceted, right? I still think that Canales is figuring it out as a coach, because that's what his background would have told you his second year in probably to still be doing. Bryce was absolutely horrendous to start last year. Didn't even come in until the second half of the season. Looked better. The offensive line looked better last year than it did this year. The passing weapons really aren't much outside of Tetro and McMillan. A lot of the other guys are unreliable without Jalen Coker, and they can't get the run game going. I just think this team doesn't have a ton of talent. Like, if you go back to when Canales was with the Buccaneers, that Buccaneers team was much more talented on the offensive side of the ball than it was in Carolina. So it's hard to expect those same results, especially with a lot of the variables that have changed up and down over the last year and a half. And so, look, it's a results-driven business. I don't know how much longer Dave Canales is going to get with the Panthers, because if it continues to not succeed, I don't think that he gets a chance to continue to coach this team next year, or the lack of success, I should say. But I also don't necessarily know how much it's like all him to blame. It feels like it's just kind of a tough situation for him, and as coaches often are, it might just be a scapegoat for bad team building and bad luck and maybe, yeah, some misfirings in coaching. But I don't think it's all his fault, is what I'm trying to say. Not that I think that he's the total answer, and not that I'm going to sit here and tell you, yes, he was the right hire at the time, but I also don't think that what Carolina is going through is all of his fault. I think that there's a lot of things that go into play there.
Yeah, and I mean, look, as a head coach instead of an offensive coordinator, you're also responsible for your defense. And for the better part of a year and a half, they've had the worst defense in football, right? And the decision, look, he kept Ejiro Evero because the second half of 2023, the Panthers defense played well, but that also just hasn't quite worked. I mentioned 18 out of 21 of their last 21 games, they've had a defensive grade as a team under 65. Right. I mean, you just can't. They don't make enough stops. I think when you look at the offense, they don't often get a chance to play in neutral football games because they don't get enough stops. They give up too many points as well. So I think that's the difference, too, between just being the offensive coordinator somewhere and being the head coaches. You're responsible for the whole team. And I think sometimes you see young OCs. I think about Sean McVay when he was first hired by the Rams. He hired Wade Phillips as such an experienced defensive coordinator and just said, hey, take the keys to the defense. I know you know what you're doing. It's fine. I'm not going to step on your toes. I think Ben Johnson in Chicago did a great job going and getting Dennis Allen, who obviously we can criticize Dennis Allen as a head coach, but as a defensive coordinator, he's always been very good. So I think there's times when you have dynamics like that where, yes, you're responsible for the whole team, and you got to put people around you that are going to be responsible for that success as well.
All right. Next game, Buccaneers Seahawks. This one's out in Seattle. It's going to be a fun one, or at least in theory. If we get the right players out there, if we get the health of some of these Buccaneer players out there, I think that it should be a fun one. Mainly Bucky Irving, who it doesn't look like he's going to play, but we'll see when we get to Sunday. Your thoughts on this one overall? You want to talk about the Seahawks? You want to talk about the Buccaneers? 2, 3, and 1 teams here.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks offense here, and we'll have a film breakdown coming out on this channel tomorrow. We've already recorded it. We're getting some editing going. We're bringing that up tomorrow. Sam Darnold and just the level of control he has in this offense right now. 4th best passing grade in the league. He has the best passing grade in the NFL between the numbers. The control that he has over the middle of the field has just been outstanding. And you see, these are the overall numbers. The numbers in the middle of the field are even better. And that last number impresses me the most, that average time to throw, because that's way faster than it was last year in Minnesota. In Minnesota, it was almost 3.1 seconds. He's down around 2.5 now, the 5th fastest in the NFL. And when you look at the Buccaneers, and look, we saw this as a weakness coming into the season, coverage over the middle of the field. It was a problem last year. The secondary's been a little better. Tyke Smith moving back to safety. I like Jacob Parrish in the slot, but the Buccaneers covering at the linebacker level with Levante David and Servassier Dennis has not been good at all, and that's still where they're getting exposed in coverage. Between the numbers in coverage, Bucs in coverage grade, 28th. Passer rating allowed, 31st. First downs and touchdowns, that rate allowed, 31st. Yards after catch per reception, 23rd. It's just, to me, if you want to attack this Bucs team in the air, you attack their linebackers, you do it over the middle of the field, and that's where Clint Kubiak and Sam Darnold are attacking the best right now in the passing game, whether it be with or without play action. I expect that to continue. The Seahawks do not have to change much in the foundation of their passing game if they want to have success in this game, especially over the middle of the field.
And, I think a lot of people are going to look at this matchup and potentially think it's a juicy one for, like Jack Smith, the Jig. But, well, I mean, he's been phenomenal all year. So you're going to kind of think that no matter what. But, like, Torrey Horton, like a lot of those wide receivers. And I think that would be disrespectful. For as much as the Bucs have struggled to cover from their linebacker level, their corners have been excellent. Jacob Parrish, Jamel Dean, Antoine Winfield Jr., now I'm going to safeties, obviously, Tyke Smith, and then Zion McCollum. All of them have a coverage grade over 64, and 3 out of the 5 of them have a coverage grade above 73. Like, this is just a really great unit right now. They're playing together very well in the secondary, and so I think there's going to be a lot more tight coverage than people are necessarily thinking that there might be in this game. And I think the 12 personnel offense, the tight end offense, in relation to what I was talking about on Monday and how good the Seahawks are at that will be a telltale sign, like you said, with how much the Buccaneers have kind of struggled over the middle of the field between the numbers, with their linebackers getting into coverage. I think that'll be a deciding factor of this game. The Bucs, no Mike Evans in this one. He is still hurt. I don't know if Bucky Irving is going to play in this game. We're recording this on Wednesday. He was seen in a walking boot and crutches. It was reported that it wasn't a long-term ankle injury that he has, but they're just trying to take every precaution that they possibly can. Even with Bucky Irving out there, They only had one drive of more than 6 plays until the fourth quarter against the Eagles. Now, the game kind of gets away from you. It gets a little wonky once you have a blocked punt for a touchdown. And to be honest with you, I think the Bucs just playing special teams better is probably the biggest X factor in this game. But they also just have to have more offensive consistency, and it's hard to do that without Mike Evans alone. It's significantly harder if you then multiply that with Bucky Irving not being in the game. So I think that Chris Godwin had some opportunities in his first game back last week where there were 2 catches specifically. I know one where you go, okay, a fully healthy Chris Godwin in the swing of things makes that catch. And I think that they just need him to be that. And is that a little unfair that you can't ramp him up a little bit more gradually? Yeah, I think so. But the fact of the matter is Mike Evans isn't in the lineup. And Emeka Egbuka can only do so much even for the sensational start to his NFL career that he's been able to give you. They need Chris Godwin to play well in this game. And they need to be able to control the ball a lot more, to have sustained drives more. They had those 2 massive passes to Bucky Irving and Emeka Egbuka last week against the Eagles. And I think both of those were like 70-yard passes with so many yards after the catch. But outside of those, I mean, this team really just struggled to keep drives going, and that was at home against Philly. And you're traveling across the country to Seattle. It's a tough place to play. That to me is what's most important. Can this team, for as much as we love the thrill of the dramatics with what Baker Mayfield brings to the table, you got to be able to control the ball. You got to be able to have more sustained drives, to get more drives than just one that lasts more than 6 plays. Until the fourth quarter. Like that part of it has to change. And without Bucky Irving, it gets even more difficult for that to happen. Ultimately, I do think that the Seahawks win this one. If Bucky Irving, if he's out there, it feels like he's going to be limited anyways. So with Chris Godwin still ramping up and no Mike Evans out there, I think this is close. I still think this is a really fun football game, but I'm going to go with Seattle 27, Tampa Bay 24 as my prediction here.
Yeah, I'm with you. The Bucs offensive line is still trying to figure things out and get everybody healthy. I think, again, Darnold's comfort zone in the middle of the field is going to really play a big factor in this game, in the passing game. And if Seattle does find, if they do find the run game again with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, that's been solid lately as well, and they have balance in this game. I just like Seattle at home a little bit better all the way around here. And look, Baker Mayfield won't go down easy. This will probably be a 1-score game because he just does not get blown out without a fight, right? But I have Seattle 24-20. I'm with you. I just think right now they're a little more complete and they can lean into their identity in this game.
Which game we got next? Oh, Titans at Cardinals. Oh, baby. A lot of different outcomes in this game here. What do you want to start talking about, Titans or the Cardinals here for this one?
I'll start on the Tennessee side. And This game certainly is getting weirder and weirder with the Cardinals and their offense and the injuries. Now Trey Benson's on IR, so it looks like their top back is Amari DiMercato, and we'll see where that goes on that side of the ball. But Tennessee, look, you giving Cam Ward no chance right now up front on the offensive line. And this is a pretty good Cardinals defensive line. They spent a lot of money on it, spent a lot of resources on it. You've got Calais Campbell, Josh Sweat, Baron Browning, young guys like Darius Robinson, Dalvin Tomlinson, the vet. I mean, they just – the Cardinals' D-line has a chance here to have success because the Titans' offensive line has not had success in any game so far this year. 26th in pass blocking grade, 30th in pressure rate. Cam Ward's getting hit the most in the league. He's getting sacked the most in the league. They got to give him a chance. At some point, if the Titans are going to score points, and this goes in the run game too with Tony Pollard, but if they're going to score points and Cam Ward is going to have success on a down-to-down basis, they have to protect him. It just has to be better. I mean, you look at the big-name guys, Dan Moore making all the money he is at left tackle, Peter Skoronski, first-round pick. J.C. Latham was out last week, not sure what his situation is yet this week. Lloyd Cushenberry at center, Zeitler. It's just not been good in pass protection, and they don't. Cam Ward, especially for as long as he generally wants to hold the football, he's not going to stand a chance unless he's protected back there. This offensive line is something you look at every single week going, do they have a chance? And this is another good defensive line they're playing. There's not many terrible defensive lines that you get to pad stats against. You look at the teams they've played, they've played Denver and they've played the Rams and they've played teams with good defensive lines. This is another one. And I think this is a real problem. If they can't block and Cam Ward's under pressure 50% of the time again, there's not many ways this can go other than failure this week again for Tennessee.
On the Cardinals side of things, this should be a win. Right? I mean, you don't like saying that about NFL games, and with the Titans having Cam Ward, I feel like I can never fully count them out, truly. But it's been such a struggle for the Tennessee Titans that the Arizona Cardinals, especially with them hosting this, really has to be a win here for them. What I'm worried about with them is that it just doesn't feel like there's enough of the in between in their offense. It feels like it's all or nothing. It feels like it's screens or bomb passes. Like it just doesn't. Now, obviously, they don't have Trey Benson anymore either. So the run game is going to be a huge factor. But I am focused on the passing game. This team is talented enough. They should beat the Tennessee Titans, but I want it to look different than what it has in the past, especially over the past 4 weeks. I felt like Drew Petzing was doing a good job as the offensive coordinator for them last year, and it just feels like they're not in rhythm this season. And to sort of look into that, I wanted to look at the in-between passes. Passes of 5 to 15 yards can be outside the numbers, could be inside the numbers. It didn't really matter. I just want to see targeting sort of that intermediate part of where you want the ball to go and where you want to be able to still stress defenses out. So they have 222 passing yards when targeting 5 to 15 yards down the field. That is 31st in the NFL, so almost dead last. They are 37th in attempts in that range, which is 25th in the NFL. They're 7th when it comes to most passing attempts behind the line of scrimmage and up to 5 yards, and they're 23rd in passes of 15 or more yards. So we've seen from Kyler and his average depth of target this year anyways that we knew that deep number wasn't going to be too high, but it's just so much underneath stuff from them. And sometimes you go, okay, well, do you have the receivers to really be able to win in the intermediate? Yes, I think they do, and I think that they won well enough last year. Now, was it a major part of what they were doing last year? No, they were still, I believe it was 23rd in the NFL in total passing attempts of 5 to 15 yard range, but it's better than 31st in the NFL. And when you look at the guys that Kyler could throw the ball to in that range, or that he would, Trey McBride has a 93.0 receiving grade on those 5 to 15 yard passes, or this was all of last year, excuse me. That was 7th best. That was the 7th best receiving grade in the NFL for passes of that range. And Marvin Harrison Jr., where his score was 44th in the NFL amongst all receivers, it was still an 86.5. When I say receivers, you're throwing tight ends and even running backs into that as well, who maybe had gotten into that range. So you have legit options in the middle of the field. And I think that's what you need to prioritize in this game. Get something in the in-between going, because right now it just feels like it's either underneath or sometimes those deeper passes, but we've even seen like they're not really attempting a lot of the deeper passes as well. I think you got to open up that intermediate middle of the field, and I think you have the right players to do it. It just doesn't feel like it's been a part of their game plan to this point in the season. And with them now down James Conner and Trey Benson, passing the football in a way that keeps the defense on their toes, that forces them to defend every blade of grass, if you will, is going to now become paramount. And I think it's that intermediate part of the field that's going to be really important to see if they're able to attack that this week.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if there's a spot for Marvin Harrison Jr. to go out and have a big game, it's this one. Because the Titans defending on the inside with guys like Xavier Woods and Roger McCreary, they've been okay, so Trey McBride might have a good battle in there. But when you look on the outside, where the Titans are running out at outside corner right now, L'Jarius Sneed is really struggling. Jalen Armour-Davis, they just recently traded for from Baltimore. He hasn't been great throughout his career. I think Harrison's going to have some good matchups, and he's got to win some of those matchups. If he goes out there and has a really good day, I think the Cardinals can cruise to a win. But if it's a struggle with the chemistry and they're just not willing to throw downfield, that's a scenario where you see this game staying within range for Tennessee.
I had the Cardinals winning 27-10. All that to say. What do you have as a final score here?
I have it 23-10. I think the running back injuries, it's not great to have Amari DiMercato and maybe Bam Knight as your running backs on game day. I still think the Cardinals offense is a bit conservative, but this Tennessee Titans team, they just have a hard time scoring, right? So I think it could be even lower scoring than that, but I have it 23-10 Arizona.
Well, the Washington Commanders at the Los Angeles Chargers. Jaden Daniels is playing in this game, I believe, or at least I think that's what the report was before last week's game, that he wasn't going to play in week 4, but the plan was for him to play in week 5. So I think we are getting him back for this game. Where do you want to start with this one, the Commanders or the Chargers?
So I think it's great that Daniels is back, and Marcus Mariota was really good in his stead. Daniels has been medically cleared, full practice today. He's going to start this week. But I think the Terry McLaurin injury and just in general, this Washington receiving core not really getting a whole lot done, especially after the catch. Their production in the passing game has really been on the quarterbacks making great throws, both Daniels and Mariota. But you look at the receiving grade, 20th in the NFL. They're 26th in yards after catch, 27th in explosive passes, and yet all of that despite having the third highest average depth of target in the league. I think actually scaling this back a little bit and getting Deebo Samuel to work after the catch, I think a heavier incorporation of Jalen Lane in a more natural role for him after the catch would help too, because he's got an average depth of target around 12.5 yards. His last 3 seasons in college, they were all at about 7.5, and he likes to work after the catch and separate underneath. I just think you're seeing some inconsistency when it comes to this passing game. And again, the deep threat was supposed to be Terry McLaurin, and then he opens everything else up. If McLaurin is out, the windows get tighter. It gets harder to break tackles. Defenders get to you and close down that separation a little bit sooner. But I think Washington, this is a game where that third highest average depth of target in the league is not going to help you, because there's very few teams on the same level as the Chargers defending downfield passes on 10-plus yard throws. They have the third best coverage grade in the NFL. So I think work underneath, find space for guys like Samuel, Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, Zach Ertz, find some ways for them to win after the catch and manufacture offense. The run game has still been pretty good for the Commanders with that rotation of backs that they have. But I just think missing Terry McLaurin, you have to go about this a different way, and you are not going to be able to take a bunch of deep shots downfield on this Chargers defense on Jesse Minter's zone coverage.
Yeah, obviously, the Chargers defense, kind of the way that you highlighted there, is an obvious talking point. How they're going to, make up for losing Joe Alt now on the offensive line as well. It is a major talking point in this game, although Marion Hampton was able to still play well last week with that being the case. But you know what? Can we talk about Quentin Johnston here? I want to talk about Quentin Johnston 4 weeks into the season, because I got some Quentin Johnston stats that might shock you, because they shocked me, okay? So 4 weeks into this season, he is third in receiving yards amongst all receivers with 337. He is third in receiving touchdowns with 4. He is fourth in catches of 20 or more yards with 4. He is fourth in contested catches with 6. He is 8th in yards after catch with 117. He has less drops than both Keenan Allen and Ladd McConkey on the season. And he's 28th overall in receiving grade amongst wide receivers with 50 or more snaps. So not the highest receiving grade in the league, but Quentin Johnston is playing well. And he's a major part of this offense right now. He is not just the afterthought. He is not just the bonus of, if we get one big Quentin Johnston catch in this game, we'll be happy. He's a major part of what the Chargers are doing right now, and he's going up against a Commanders secondary that has continuously struggled no matter who they have gone up against. Their corners and their safeties have really struggled this season. Maybe it'll look a little bit better this week if the Commanders can get pressure on the pocket and pressure against Justin Herbert. But to this point, they have just not been able to slow down anybody. And I really do feel like it is just another week for Quentin Johnston to continue to play well. So I wanted to shout him out, because the narratives with him of not being able to catch, can't separate, can't produce, all this kinds of stuff, the bust word has been thrown around with Quentin Johnston. Obviously, his career did not get off to the start that they wanted it to. But here this season in 2025, he is a legitimate producer for this team in this passing offense. And so I wanted to make sure that I highlighted that, because I do think that he is a big X factor in this game because of how much the Commanders' secondary group has struggled. Ultimately, I have the Chargers winning this game. I just cannot trust the Commanders on defense right now. 31-17 is the final score that I have here, with the Chargers winning it.
I have it closer than that. I have it actually 24-21 Chargers. I am concerned about the Chargers' offensive line, and Washington's run defense has been pretty good, even if the coverage hasn't been. I think they keep the Commanders in front of them on defense. His secondary for the Chargers is obviously fantastic, but it's a great call on Johnston, and especially the way that he can make vertical plays downfield. His size and speed, theoretically, is a perfect match with Justin Herbert and his big arm, right? So I think I do have the Chargers. I like him at home. I think the Commanders, without McLaurin and with the lack of help they have in the secondary, it's a problem. If Justin Herbert has time back there, then I think you're really going to get some deep shots downfield. One-on-one, Johnston against Lattimore on the outside. McConkey going to get Mike Sainer still down there in the slot. Look for a better week from him than he had last week against the Giants. I like the Chargers in this game. I do think it's going to be competitive, and anytime you have Jaden Daniels back on the field, you can win a ball game. But you're right, that Commanders defense is a real concern.
The Detroit Lions traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals here. Bengals still licking their wounds from a tough Monday night showing out in Denver against the Broncos here, and obviously it does not get any easier hosting a red-hot Detroit Lions team. You talking about the Lions, you talk about the Bengals to start this one.
I mean, it's tough to talk about the Bengals offense, but we have to do it. So, look, I think the matchup we're looking at here is Jake Browning, and I know, look, he's a functional backup if the situation is ideal, but the situation is not ideal, especially in pass protection right now. Obviously, we've made a lot about the Bengals offensive line, and, well, that's really sinking them right now. They're 28th in pass blocking grade, and honestly, I'm surprised they're even that high. You look at the matchup of two Lions edge defenders. One, we know very well, and Aiden Hutchinson, who certainly looks like Aiden Hutchinson coming off the leg injury from last year, 92.1 pass rush grade. But how about all of a sudden the partner in crime he has there in Al-Qadim Muhammad, an 86.9 pass rush grade? He's been really good so far. We've been asking forever, hey, who are the Lions going to have as a second edge rusher here who can complement Hutchinson and just take something off of him? Right now, that's Al-Qadim Muhammad, and I'll tell you what's exciting for the Lions in this D-line. We know DJ Reader and Tyleik Williams are solid run defenders, but they just opened the window for Aleem McNeil to return from IR. He's their best interior pass rusher. You get him back with the way these two edge rushers are playing right now, you got a dangerous pass rush, and then you're going up against a Bengals offensive tackle duo that has struggled in pass protection. Orlando Brown Jr., 63 pass blocking grade, Amarius Mims of 49.3. The Lions will probably blitz some just to throw it in there, and at times their defense can get aggressive, but I'll tell you what, they don't necessarily have to if Hutchinson and Al-Qadim Muhammad are going to keep playing like this. You send that four-man rush in this Bengals team, they still are not going to give a whole lot of time for Jake Browning to work in the pocket.
You were talking about the Bengals offensive line there. I actually want to talk about Detroit's offensive line because I think that their pass rush has really started to heat up, as the year has gone on, which I think has been a major catalyst for them. But I think the interior offensive line is the biggest difference from how the season started to where it is now and how we think of the Detroit Lions heading into this game. When you look at the first 2 weeks overall, their interior offensive line, so you're looking at Christian Mahogany, you're looking at Tate Ratledge, you're looking at Graham Glasgow, 49.2 overall blocking grade with their three interior players through the first 2 weeks of the season. Obviously not ideal. Weeks 3 and 4, much better. 69.8, almost 70 between those guys. The floor has been so much higher with their interior players over the last 3 weeks, or 2 weeks, excuse me. And I think that means a ton towards where we have this team now as opposed to where they were at the beginning of the season. Over the last 2 weeks, they are 5th in the NFL in EPA per play. The Bengals, 32nd in the NFL in EPA per play. It's hard looking at how well the Lions are playing up front on both sides of the ball to think that they would not outscore the Cincinnati Bengals at this point in time. And so specifically, I think that it's a shout out to those three guys on the interior for Detroit, which looked a little shaky to start the season. I mean, that's where they had some replacement players. You wonder, was this going to be a full year thing? They have really bounced back and they have really started to gel together very, very well. And so with that, it's hard for me to find a realm where outside of Jake Browning just going nuclear, even if he does, the problem with this game for me, Dalton, is that even a fantastic Jake Browning game, does that keep up with the Lions for how well they have played over the last couple of weeks? I don't even think that's a guarantee. So even if you say Jake Browning's got to go crazy in this game, even if Jake Browning goes crazy, they could still get outscored with how the Lions are playing and how they're blocking up front. 35-17 is the score that I have here. I think the Bengals are going to be a little bit better than what we saw on Monday Night Football, but ultimately I just don't think that they're going to outscore this Detroit Lions team.
I'm with you. I think the Bengals right now, the last 2 weeks and the beatings they've taken against Minnesota, and now against Denver, it feels a bit demoralizing. It feels like, I know they went on a nice run with Jake Browning a couple of years ago, and he played relatively well, but even that situation was better than the one they're in now. Their defense is worse. This offensive line, and we mentioned the pass protection, can't run block either. They can't run the ball at all, and you saw Denver with their run game control the pace of the game, especially in the second half. I'm with you. I've got Detroit 35-17. The Bengals, it's just ugly right now. It really is, especially in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And I've been asked several times, hey, well, should they trade for a quarterback, a Jameis or a Russell Wilson or a Kirk Cousins? I just don't think it matters. I really don't. I mean, until they start playing significantly better up front and they can find a way to run the football, we're going to see more of the same from the Bengals that we've seen the last couple weeks.
As much as I think Jameis Winston could be a lot of fun with these offensive weapons, I do think that ultimately you're probably right. I just want to see it for my own selfishness because I think that all their play, at least they would score a lot of points, I think, more than they're scoring now. But it's hard to think that would amount to wins given how they are playing up front. Sunday Night Football this week, we've got the New England Patriots traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. Now, some might look at this game and scoff a little bit, be like, no, it's another easy victory for the Bills. I'm not so sure about that. But before we dig into it, our guy Terron Armstead is back with us for a trench preview here. We're going to be talking about Will Campbell versus Joey Bosa. Let's take a listen. Back with our guy this week, Terron Armstead, for another trench matchup preview. And we got a fun one. As a draft guy, I can't wait to ask Terron all about my guy, Will Campbell. I loved coming into the draft. People were like, oh, is he a tackle? Is he a guard? I don't care, man. He's a football player. I know he's going to be a good one wherever he ends up. He's starting at offensive tackle for the New England Patriots. They're going up against Joey Bosa, and I think that is the matchup that we want to preview here. So, Terron, how are we doing, my friend?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Good morning.
So I want to first take it back. 2013, a young rookie, Terron Armstead, and I want to ask you about what it's like playing as a rookie on the offensive line in the NFL first and foremost. I've had former offensive linemen tell me that it's like trying to, drink water through a fire hose. You're trying to master your own game. You're trying to learn other pass rushers' games, and sometimes just really difficult to balance all of those things, specifically in the trenches where you have like a split second to get it right or wrong. What was it like playing as a rookie, as a young future all-pro guy in the NFL? Take me back to that first season that you had in 2013 and just the first couple of years that you had in the NFL adjusting to life in the trenches.
My situation was different, Trevor. My situation was different than Will Campbell, who's coming in as a day one starter, high first-round draft pick. I was a third-round draft pick out of University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. So a small school guy. I had more of a learning curve. And I didn't start my first majority of my rookie year until towards the end. And once I got that first start, it's really you get thrown to the wolves in a sense. Like, you've been playing football for so long, you've been doing X, Y, and Z for so long, but you're inserted now into a world that is the elites, the top of the top, the best guys in the world that's rushing the passer, that's playing a run. So it's a learning curve, and it's really that. Like, you're in a race to learn. You're in a race to improve. You will have growing pains. Every single young player, every single young lineman will take losses, will get beat with his hands or taking the wrong step, wrong footwork. It's just so many things to learn. And you want to be one of those guys that don't make the same mistake twice. Mm-hmm. So if you can accelerate that process, that learning process, go through the growing pains, use the growing pains as a way to improve and get better, then we start to see guys that start off their career at a high level.
So I want to ask you specifically, you talked about some of the ways that you struggle and you make mistakes. You don't want to make the same mistake twice. So when you were coming in and when you did eventually get into that starting lineup, my question for you is, what were some of those things? We've talked about, making sure that you handle your anchor and you handle power first and foremost, but you were one of the most athletic offensive tackles to ever come through the combine. So I know they were excited about getting you out there, and we knew that you were the athlete to be able to play the position, but what were some of those early growing pains that you went through as a young rookie offensive tackle?
Man, it's so many that before we even start playing actual football is the issue that I had an issue with my first start. So my first start is New Orleans Saints versus Carolina Panthers for the division title. And like I said, I played
I didn't
Arkansas.
realize that was your first. I didn't realize that was your first start. That is
Yeah.
truly to the wolves right there for a division title.
No, listen, seriously. And it's I'm blocking all pro Greg Hardy, who's had like 16, 17 sacks that year, something crazy. And I came from Arkansas Pine Bluff, so I never dealt with crowd noise before. So my biggest issue, Trevor, was listening to the play, like trying to hear the play and getting off the snap at the right, on the ball at the right time. That was my issue. It wasn't necessarily like the football aspect of it. It was before we even got to the line of scrimmage. That was the hardest part. Like hearing Drew Brees say the play because of the crowd noise. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, so it was a couple times that I heard the play wrong, so I went the wrong way. A couple times I was lit off the ball. I gave up a sack in the first half, maybe even two in the first half. Like my first half was forgettable. It was not, you know what I mean? It was not my best showing. Second half, I was on one, balling. I was balling. I locked in, was able to learn from those mistakes, and that really jump started my career.
I love it. Well, we love the early bounce. Right? Like I said, like you were very clearly the athlete to be able to play into the pros, and it makes sense that you were able to make the adjustments that you were because you had that athletic baseline, and it was kind of just getting those reps down. Speaking of getting those reps down, I know you watched Will Campbell when he was throughout his preseason. You watched him a little bit here into the regular season. Thoughts overall on him, man? I understand that there may be a little bit of physical deficiencies with him, certainly with the length. We talked about that a lot before he got drafted to the New England Patriots, and there was talk of, is he an offensive tackle? Is he an offensive guard? Could he be a center? Like, what is he in the NFL? And just the mentality of how he approached the position, just listening to him talk about the game, even before he puts the helmet on, gave me a lot of faith that he would kind of do what you were talking about, where it's like, all right, yeah, he gets a couple of his lumps here and there as a rookie, but you felt good about just how he approached the position. And so early thoughts here with him after watching him in the preseason, then a little bit of him here in the regular season, just your thoughts overall on Campbell as a player.
Yeah, you said it, Trevor. As soon as we started the show today, you said he's a football player, and that's exactly what he is. He is a guy that this is what he does for a living. He was made to do this, and he plays the game that way. He's physical. He's tough. He's a finisher. He may have his limitations, but that's not stopping him or slowing him down at all. I've been impressed with Will Campbell. He's starting his career at a much different spot than I did. Like he's way past anything I was as a rookie. So to see him right now, just 4 weeks into the NFL season, I've been impressed. He had a pretty stellar performance last week against the Carolina Panthers. Really strong hands. He might not have great length, but the timing of his strike, he's getting his hands on guys before they touch him, and that's the goal. That's the key. So he's understanding his strike zone and he's taking advantage of it. Strong anchor. Man, I'm not seeing many issues with this young man right now.
Yeah, something that I love about offensive linemen is when they take the fight to defensive linemen. You know, they don't just sit back and wait to react. Those guys who are able to, like you said, you know, sort of dictate that contact are the guys who can really be big difference makers. I know you've gone up against Joey Bosa throughout your career. The last name Bosa, man, whether it's Joey or Nick, I mean, these are some of the best in the NFL over the last decade when they're playing at their prime. And all right, maybe Joey's not quite in his prime like he was a couple of years ago, but this is still a formidable edge rusher, especially for a great test in a rookie offensive tackle. So talk to me about Joey. When you have planned for him and gone up against him throughout your career, what are the things that you've noticed about him?
I would say, Trevor, he's looking more in his prime than we have seen in recent years. He's healthy. He really likes that Buffalo Bills scheme. The way that they run coverage, they typically rush 4 and run coverage with 7. So that makes the quarterback hold the ball a little longer than other defensive schemes. He looks more in his prime than we have seen in years. Explosive, and he looked like he's taking his brother's powers. Like since Nick is out right now, the great Nick Bosa, Joey had a couple bull rushes last week against the New Orleans Saints that were like, oh my goodness. He looked like Nick. I've known Joey for being more of a hands guy, working edges, and Nick will run like right down the middle of you and make you stop it. But Joey is doing all of it. He looks incredible right now. He's playing at a very high level. He's been a great addition to that Buffalo Bills defense. For me, when I was in at left tackle, I hated to see the veterans. I hated to see the guys with 80-plus sacks because they just know how to do it. Like, they know how to read sets. They know how to look for tendencies. They know how to, swipe hands and all those things. Give me a young first-round pick. Give me the top pick. Give me him all day. He don't know what he's looking for. I'm switching up sets. I'm kicking his ass. But the veterans, bro, I hated to see a Justin Houston, James Harrison. Those guys they always gave me problems.
James Harrison's terrifying because he'd win with the wisdom, but he'd also, I don't know if you've seen some of the off-season workout videos this dude has done.
Insane.
He's still pushing sleds with like 1,000 pounds on it.
Insane.
He is he's a pretty crazy one. I'm excited to see this matchup and how Will Campbell deals with Joey Bosa's power here in primetime on Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a great matchup. Obviously, the Bills have been rolling, but the Patriots, man, they've had a couple of games where they look pretty good too. So I'm excited to watch it. I know you are too. Terron, appreciate it, my friend.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate Terron, as always, for giving us that trench expertise there. It was it was kind of funny to hear him talk about like going from Arkansas Pine Bluff to the NFL, and it's like, oh, what was it like your first half? He's like, I couldn't hear. Like, I wasn't used to that many people in the stands, and I'm not gonna lie, Dalton. Like, sometimes I hear about that. We hear that in college more than the NFL. Like some of these guys, especially with the transfer portal, the way that it is right now, you go like, oh, for example, like the Ole Miss quarterback,
Trinidad Chambliss.
Yes, Trinidad Chambliss. He's coming from Ferris State, and they were like, oh yeah, there were like 2,000 people in the stands when he was playing at Ferris State, and now he's in front of like 80,000 in SEC Stadium. I always think that's kind of like a footnote. Like, it's like, oh, okay, like that's cool. But Terron's saying, no, that was an actual factor. I had to get ready for that. But what he talks about with Will Campbell versus Joey Bosa, obviously that's a big time matchup. Where do you want to start with this one? What's the matchup that you want to focus on for Bills and Patriots?
That's actually exactly where I'm going. I was going to go there anyway with Will Campbell. And with Morgan Moses, the veteran, on the other side. You look at these two, and look, this New England offensive line is a lot better. They poured a ton of resources into it this offseason. Garrett Bradbury's been good at center. Jared Wilson was out last week at left guard, but he's been good. But I want to focus on the two tackles, Campbell, like you guys were just talking about, and Morgan Moses. In their two wins against Miami and against Carolina, the Patriots tackles, Campbell and Moses, have a 76 pass blocking grade and have combined to allow just one pressure, all right? In the two losses against Vegas and against Pittsburgh, 56.6 pass blocking grade from those two guys with a combined 15 pressures allowed. So you're seeing right now, if they can pass protect, and obviously last year it wasn't a question if they could pass protect because they just couldn't. This year, the games where they're pass protecting, they're winning. Drake May looks comfortable. They're getting something going in the run game. Stephon Diggs started to break out last week against Carolina. So I think you're starting to see this offensive line as it continues to gel. It's given them a shot to win games, whereas last year it didn't. But I think the entire matchup of Will Campbell and Morgan Moses against, yes, Joey Bosa, who's been spectacular this year, but also against Greg Rousseau. Moses is going to see a lot of him, and A.J. Epinesa. Those are the three main defensive ends there for Buffalo. That matchup is going to tell you a lot about how this game goes. If those three guys can make Drake May uncomfortable beating these tackles, then it's really going to tilt Buffalo's way. If New England can protect and make and continue to play as efficient as he has been, he's leading the league in completion percentage right now. He looks really good when he is clean back there in the pocket. Then New England's got a shot to win. I think that matchup that you guys talked about, along with Morgan Moses on the other side of the line at right tackle, that's a big, big factor in this game.
So when you look at the Bills' schedule, the teams that they have played so far, you see the Ravens, it's the Saints, it's the Dolphins, and then it's the Jets. In three of those games, you had rushing threats at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, and Spencer Rattler isn't quite what those other guys are, but Spencer Rattler, you mentioned when we were talking about the Saints, like he's been scooting a little bit, like he's been able to be a weapon with his legs and pick up some first downs and keep defenses honest there. Tua, not really so much. I mean, he's much more of a pocket passer. So I wanted to look at what the Bills have been like when defending quarterbacks on the run, because that's a major part of what Drake May wants to do. They want to sort of call the offense to where, yes, it's a drop back passing system with May, but they give him the freedom to say like, okay, if the first or the second progression really quickly aren't there, you could take off with your legs. And we saw that against Carolina. We've seen that when this offense is having a lot of success. Drake May as a rusher is a big reason why. So when you look at those three games they played against the Jets, the Ravens, and the Saints, specifically for Buffalo's defense, just a 47 0.7 run defense grade against those quarterbacks specifically. A 0.606. No, it's actually a 0.6. Yeah, 0.606. I said that right the first time. Zeros and sixes messed me up there. EPA per rush allowed. So basically all of that to say, the Buffalo Bills have been susceptible to giving up yards, big plays, and I will say important plays when it's come to quarterbacks being able to pick up yards and first downs with their legs. And I think that they have another option here that they really have to think about here with Drake May. 66.1 rushing grade so far this season, and it's just a big part of what they want to do to keep moving the ball on offense. They're giving Drake May that freedom, and it's containing him is going to be a big part of what they need to do to be successful in this game. I think this game's going to be a lot closer than people maybe give it credit for. The Patriots are getting 8.5 in this game. I think that's a lot of points, man. I know that the Bills are good. I do, but man, I think New England's going to give them at least a test here. I think the Bills will win this one. 31-27 is the score here that I have. So very clearly, comfortably taking those 8.5 points and feeling pretty good about it.
That is a good call. The Bills are giving up over 9 yards a carry to quarterbacks right now. It's an issue, and late in the play, they've given up the 5th most yards on scrambles. So I think even on pass plays, you mentioned Drake May and using his legs. I think down in the red zone, he's a really big threat, especially you saw him score a touchdown rolling out on the bootleg last week. And B, it gives him an outlet to not put the football in danger. I think Josh McDaniels is telling him, hey, if you have a choice between running for 6 yards and throwing the ball into a tight window, take off running, live to play the next down. And I think that's part of May's efficiency and not putting the ball in danger. When this Patriots team hasn't turned the ball over, they've looked really good on offense. We've just seen in all four of their games, we've seen that be the difference. They don't turn the ball over against Miami and Carolina, they win. They do against Pittsburgh and Vegas, they lose. I know that goes so often for so many teams, but for the Patriots, they don't have that margin of error and the weapons to work with to overcome those mistakes yet. But I'm with you. I think you got a competitive game here. I think New England is a lot better than last year. They've shown that so far, especially in the trenches. I do think Josh Allen finds a way to win this game because he's the ultimate Patriot killer ever since he's been in the league. Bills 27, Patriots 20. Fun one we have there in Buffalo.
Monday Night Football, we have the Kansas City Chiefs traveling to Jacksonville. With Jacksonville playing as well as they have been recently, specifically last week, I think this sets up to be a very fun one, especially for how well the Chiefs played against the Ravens last week. So a fun and exciting one heading into Monday night on Monday Night Football here in Jacksonville. Where are we starting with this preview, Dalton?
We're going to talk about the Chiefs offense having their breakout last week. And of course, a very loyal Jacksonville Jaguars fan mentioned to me that is their Jaguars defensive coordinator. It's Anthony Campanile. I'd been saying it wrong before that, but I watched so many games with the sound off that, you know what, Trev, when you work in silence, you don't hear anything. So Anthony Campanile against Patrick Mahomes in this game. And I think what you get, and it's the obvious story from the Chiefs offense this past week, the Xavier Worthy effect. Okay, you could just feel it when they were playing the Ravens.
Yep.
Deep shots, or at least even the threat of deep shots, changes the entire structure of the defense when you have a guy who ran the fastest 40-yard dash time of all time. And when you look at, this is going back to last year now. This is not just this year, Trev. This is the entirety of last year also included in this. So a year plus of Xavier Worthy. When Xavier Worthy has been on the field, Patrick Mahomes, 81.3 passing grade, 7.4 yards per attempt. Very solid stuff. When Worthy is not on the field, whether it just be it has a few plays off or he was injured like the last couple games, 63 passing grade, 5.8 yards per attempt, and his average depth of target for any pass when Worthy is on the field is a full yard greater than it is with Worthy off the field. So when you look at just the Worthy effect, and it's not to say that, oh, he's one of the elite receivers in the NFL now, or he's always getting the ball, and yes, he needs to get a good amount of targets to at least keep that threat going, but just the threat of that speed and what it does to dictate coverage structures and more too high looks and space for Mahomes to work underneath, what you get now in the short term is that, okay, Mahomes has space to work with and he can throw it a little further downfield. And when you saw it last week a couple of times when they do get those single high situations, if teams want to man up, then Worthy can run right by somebody and they can hit a big play like they did early in the game against the Ravens. Long term, you look at this and you go, okay, if Worthy's healthy and out there and they're open in the space, and then in week 7 we get Rashee Rice back to work underneath, you see the vision for this Chiefs offense. But Xavier Worthy right now, is their most important player because he takes the top off and he makes safeties respect your offense. He makes you respect those explosive plays that could happen on any given play. And then even you have the trick plays like the end around that he had for, what was it, a 35-yard carry last week as well. So you just have so many more options with a guy who's on the field with speed like that, because it opens up everything else. I've talked about this a lot, say with the Green Bay Packers and Matthew Golden. It is the same thing with the Chiefs and Worthy. It opens up everything else as a complementary piece to everything Mahomes gets to do underneath.
Yeah, it's his presence in the offense. You're right. I mean, it cannot be understated how important that is. And then when they get Rashee Rice back, I mean, that's the real version of the Kansas City Chiefs. People sort of wanted to either write them off or crown them one way or the other. The true story of the Chiefs is always going to be when they were going to get those two offensive playmakers back. Specifically in this game, Dalton, we've talked about it before. Anytime that you play the Chiefs, what's the best defense for Patrick Mahomes? Him being on the sideline, him not being on the field. And I think the Jags have a way to be able to do that against Kansas City this upcoming week. Chiefs, 52.0 run defense grade this season. That's 30th in the NFL. 0.108 EPA per rush. If that doesn't mean much to you, 31st in the NFL. So they are not good at defending the run, or they have not been through the first 4 weeks of the season. Now, on the other side of things, the Jags have been great on the ground in their first year with Liam Cohen as their head coach and offensive play designer, offensive philosopher, I should also say. 576 rushing yards so far this season. That is fourth in the NFL. 188 yards before contact, which is first in the NFL. So we don't talk about the Jags offensive line as, these great people movers and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, but they are executing at a very high level. First in the NFL in yards before contact. 70.4 rushing grade, that's 14th in the NFL. And I tried to do a little bit more digging. Okay, is this a power running team? Is this a zone running team? Honestly, they do a little bit of both. They've done more zone running than they have power concept between the tackles running, but the output is pretty similar for how much they've given one attempts to one side versus the other. And so really it doesn't really matter. They've been pretty versatile in how they've been able to run the ball, and the Chiefs just really haven't been able to stop it. And if they can really dominate the time of possession while also continuing to move the football and have a very high EPA per play when running the ball, that is how you keep this a one-score game. That's how you keep Xavier Worthy, Patrick Mahomes, and that Kansas City Chiefs offense on the sideline more. And I like their chances in this game. Ultimately, the way that the Chiefs played last week, hard for me to not take them in this game. I'm going to take the Chiefs 27-24, but I think this could be a blast to watch. This could be a ton of fun, and I'm really looking forward to watching this. This could be a huge, for as much as I just talked about running the football, Dalton, this could be a huge Trevor Lawrence game. This could be a huge changing of the narrative game for him. If that offense is able to play well, if he's able to have a handful of really nice throws, and if the Jags are able to win this game, it's going to be a signature type of Trevor Lawrence game that people will point back to and talk about him taking that next step, becoming more consistent, and hanging around with some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL like we felt he was going to when he was coming through the draft all those years ago. So I think this is going to be a fun one, but ultimately I do have the Chiefs winning by 3.
To your point about Jacksonville and the run game, because it's been really effective, Travis Etienne's been awesome. Their offensive line has been good. And I want to point out, too, give credit to the tight ends. They have the highest run blocking grade for tight ends in the NFL right now. Bretton Strange, Hunter Long, Johnny Munt. When you see the Jags get in these multiple tight end sets, they're coming right downhill, right at you, and they're doing it really effectively. So I think Liam Cohen in that run game does give them a shot. I do think having Worthy in this game specifically with the Jags and their zone coverage and how good they've been, especially I've mentioned them covering over the middle of the field. They've been doing it better than anybody. I think it is a big factor to have Worthy to space things out a little bit, and for Mahomes to kind of use that death by 1,000 paper cuts approach. I'm with you. I think Trevor Lawrence is kind of the fulcrum in this game. I think there's a lot of constants. There's a lot of things both of these teams are good at, but Lawrence against a really good Chiefs secondary that's turned things around after a bad week 1, Trevor Lawrence is going to have to play his best game of the year. I think if he plays roughly the same, which is kind of average football that he's played the first 4 weeks of the year, I like the Chiefs in this game. Lawrence has got to make 4 or 5 throws. I think that's, and it doesn't have to be that many with them, with their run game and with their defense, the way they've been playing. That might be all. He's got to make 4 or 5 throws that makes the difference in this game if the Jags are going to win. But I'm with you. Tight game, 2 good defenses. I'm taking the Chiefs, so I think they broke through last week, 23-20, Kansas City on the road.
There we go. All the games previewed, minus the 4, that of course the teams that are on the bye week this week. So a little bit shorter of a week, but an exciting one with some really great games. Appreciate everybody joining us in the chat. It was fun getting to go back and forth with a lot of you guys as we were previewing a lot of different teams in this episode. If you guys don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you're curious about any of the numbers, anything that we talked about here on the show, you could see them for yourself with that PFF sub. PFF NFL Show 25. That's how you get 25% off. That is the promo code when you go to subscribe.pff.com. That's how you can make that happen and see all these numbers for yourself. And when you get that subscription, we would love to go back and forth with you guys during these shows in the live chat, what you're seeing in our database, some numbers that you think are going to be big difference makers in this one. We would love for you guys to have that and get back and forth and just get involved in the show. If you also want to get involved with the show from a sponsorship perspective, sales@pff.com is how you can get in contact with us. We would love to talk with you more about that. Dalton, big game in college, a lot of big games. We're in the by the way, shout out to the PFF Discord. If you guys aren't in the PFF Discord, go jump in that. We've got the NFL tab, the betting tab, the college football tab, and I was just about to say, we just did our picks for college football, and you are more of a college guy than I am, although I love it. And I'm watching it from a draft perspective, just from an enjoyment perspective. The games that we picked this week, they're tough, man. I genuinely think that I might be on the opposite side of the coin from you or Max or Mitch or the Discord user that we get involved every single week. So it's going to be a fun college football week as well this weekend.
It is. Maybe the depth of the slate not as loaded as last week, because last week was absolutely loaded. But I think a few games I'm excited for. We're actually going to go down the street to Nippert Stadium to see Iowa State take on Cincinnati. Both teams running hot right now. I can't wait for Alabama and Vanderbilt. The rematch with Diego Pavia against Alabama is going to be spectacular. And then the nightcap, Miami and Florida State. You could not have a bigger game in the ACC right now with the way Miami's rolling. But Florida State, the loss in Virginia kind of hurts, and now they really need this win at home against the Hurricanes. So good college slate as always. Check out the college channel for our previews on 9 games this week.
There you go. Love the promotion there as well. I'll set you up for that beautifully, but I wanted to hear that from you. So whether you're enjoying college football or the NFL this weekend, whatever you're doing, enjoy it. We'll see you guys on Monday for the grade release show. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching once again, and we'll see you next week.